It's all
When I was out there a while ago, there was one of the crazies. I haven't had any encounters for today. She was screaming. They were standing right behind you. So we're all. She's like, she got screaming at everybody. And so and she heard me. She said, "Sing Stephanie." I don't know who that is. I said, "Well, blessings right back at you." Yeah, we've seen him in blessings. Blessings. Oh, don't go to things.
All right, it is 5:30 in a few seconds. Welcome this evening to City Council meeting. Before we get going, I just want to say hi to Wayne. I really like that hummingbird behind you. Are you at a local library or something?
No, I'm in an Airbnb.
Awesome. So Councilmember Wayne Carpenter is joining us from Oaxaca City, Oaxaca, Mexico. So sounds like a really cool place to be. So tonight we're going to get kicked off with a pledge of allegiance to the U.S. flag by Councilmember Dave Covington. Our Texas pledge will be led by Judy Garrett, and then Craig Pearson will give our invitation. Please rise.
Join me in the pledge. I pledge
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll take that flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Join me in prayer. Father God, we come to you in Jesus' name, Lord. We thank you so much for this place and being able to be a part of it and the wonderful people that are here. We thank you for this spring weather. We pray, Lord, that it will bring the rains and not the bad weather or tornadoes, but fill our lakes and aquifers. Father, we pray and indeed claim your promise that you're present. And we desire, Lord, that the proceedings tonight accomplish your will and that they be done in a manner that brings you honor and glory. May it be so in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right, we'll call this city council meeting for Tuesday, February 27th to order a little after 5:30. The first item on the agenda is public comments. I do have several that have filled out forms for public comments, but they will be speaking on agenda items, so we will call those on agenda items 7 or 8 or whichever one that is. So any other one that did not fill out a form that has a public comment other than what's on the agenda? There being no public comments, we will go to the consent agenda. I will read these. These are items 3 through 6. I'll just read them and then we can entertain and act on these through one motion. The first item is to consider minutes and approve minutes from the previous meetings, February 13th City Council Workshop and the February 13th City Council meeting. Approve appointments to the boards and commissions, Building Standards Commission and Library Board of Directors. Amy, do you mind? I've done print out the other. Could you read those names out for us? I'm sorry for putting you on the spot. I pulled the wrong.
Yes,
Good
for our
idea.
Building and Standards Commission is Brian Johnson and Terry Pridemore for the Library Board of Directors. And we'll come forward with some additional alternate members for the Building and Standards Commission. But we also recommend on that committee, or on that commission, excuse me, that we move Ralph Masters and Eric
Hockenberg,
Hockenberg
yeah.
up to regular members to replace John or Martin and Richard DeLeo.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that information. Item 5 is to approve an ordinance declaring unopposed candidates elected to office and canceling the May 4th general city election. And item 6 is to approve a resolution authorizing the submission of a grant application to the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program FEMA for a multi-force door training simulator.
Move we approve items 3 through 6 on the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve items 3 through 6. Any other comments? There being none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those op- Thanks, Wayne. Sorry, I went a little fast. All those opposed, everybody said aye, so no opposed. Passes unanimously. Item 7 is to hold a public hearing and consider a zoning change from agricultural to planned development commercial highway on 7.51 acres located at 3401 South Interstate 35 Service Road, located at the southwest intersection of Interstate 35 and Mesquite Road. I'll let you go first and then we'll call the public hearing.
And thank you,
Thanks,
Mr. Mayor. As you guys may recall, this was in last year for a zoning change. The amendment to this is now a planned development zoning change and also has some requirements for a development agreement. What is being proposed is a travel center with a convenience store, gas station, and 2 restaurants. Again, the change is to a planned development, and that is a commitment to the site plan, building elevation, and subdivision plat. Here is what the proposed site plan will look like. There are 3 access to the site, 2 off of Mesquite and 1 off of 35. As you can see, there is a deceleration lane getting into the site that's approximately 350 to 440 feet long for that deceleration lane. Here is the convenience stores and the 2 restaurants at the anchor of that area. Passenger gas lanes and diesel for trucks on the side. Here is the proposed elevation for the building. Most of it is going to be mostly stucco. There is brick around the bottom of the facade. And there's also some metal accents that they're proposing. For the conditions of the development agreement, they agreed to do road and stormwater drainage improvements for Mesquite Road. And that's from the interstate to the western boundaries of their property. They will dedicate a wastewater easement, and they guarantee to construct a future sewer line when that line is extended to their property. There's also going to be an installation of an 8-foot landscape buffer and a 6-foot wood privacy fence for the adjacent residential property at the western boundary of the property. They will provide an on-site school bus facility and construct to the building elevations that I just showed. For the surrounding zonings for this property is currently zoned agricultural. Across the street, there's a little bit of commercial highway. To the west of the property is agricultural. Across the street on the interstate is commercial highway at Cedar Crest. The future land use map shows this as a commercial corridor. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this item at their meeting last week, Tuesday, and unanimously recommended approval of the zoning change. With that, the use of the property shall conform to the commercial highway district. Type 2 standard for design is applicable. Approval of the subdivision plat, site plan, building plans are also required. And the improvements that's required in the development agreement must be completed prior to the certificate of occupancy for the building. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have. And also the applicant is here should you have any questions for him as well.
All right, thank you. So what we'll do is we will We're gonna go with a public hearing and then we'll discuss the matter and have questions from the council second. So first, we will close the regular council meeting and open it up for public comments. So anyone who would like to speak in favor or in opposition to this may speak. I have 3 that signed up, and there may be more. One of the things I would ask is if it's just 3, it's time's not a huge deal, but we'd like for you to please keep it to 3 minutes. So we'll have a timer. Dave Covington, council member, has a timer. So he'll typically raise his hand about 10 seconds. So you have time to land that plane. You don't have to ditch it in mid-sentence. So anyway, so the first person I have for public comments is Rosemary Stampley. And just state your name and an address for the record. We would appreciate it.
My name is Rosemary Stampley. My address is 579 Mesquite Road. I'm a resident of Belton. Been there for some time. And I'm just a little really upset. I thought this had been taken care of. I didn't know that we would be hit with this again. But I had one question. Have you all already awarded this? Is it already a done deal? Is this just a formality of, you've already heard our pleas and our voices? You see the people here from the community. And you know how we feel about this. And we're not saying don't make changes, but there's a truck stop at the corner of 121 and 35. It's never full, never full. My husband used to park there. I've been there all times of night, day and night. It's never full. This one across the road, there's truck stops. There's no other truck stop until almost to Salado. So, but there's land. And I can't understand why they want that little 7 acres of land when there's land beyond Shankly Road that they could use, and they could use a truck stop. So I am saying that if you have not already sold us out or given them what they please consider the fact that we are there because that's where we want to be. And there's been a lot of changes in the years, but we have stayed the course. So please don't do this to our community, please.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next on the list is Michelle Ciccarello. Yeah.
My name is Michelle Ciccarello. I live at 511 Mesquite Road. I want to ask before I start, how many people here are from the Mesquite Road neighborhood? These people don't have anything else. They don't have hundreds of businesses and other homes in other places. This is all they have. The loss of this would be very painful for these people. But I would like to say for the record that the petitioner who wants to build a truck stop here is actually an LLC called Unity 4, and they own hundreds of businesses. This is a list of their businesses. They own hundreds of businesses, convenience stores, grocery stores, truck stops, all kinds of businesses, telling them that right here, compatible with the neighborhood, not a good place for a truck stop, doesn't really inconvenience them. They have a lot of other options. We don't have other options. So we would like it if the city would place a restrictive covenant that runs with the land, prohibiting 24-hour businesses, toxic waste dumps, and any other use of the land that prohibits the existing neighborhood from losing their property values or losing the reasonable enjoyment of their land. When we look at the issue of the truck stop for, oh, and by the way, as far as property values, property value for my house right now is $404,000. I want that on the record, because if a truck stop goes in, it won't be that anymore. And I will be seeking some kind of compensation from somebody on that. Hopefully it won't go that far, but regarding the bus stop, this is just nauseating. Children wait there before it's even light out. Children of all different ages. My child was waiting there from the time she was in elementary school before it's even light out. When the truck stop solution became, we'll build a bus stop for them right there. The thing, could you put the map up again of the thing that's going in the truck stop? When you look at, I'm gonna walk away from the microphone for a minute. The kids wait right here at where I-35 meets Mesquite Road. There's not a place on there that you can put a bus stop that will be safe, because the whole area is trucking. The human trafficking that happens at truck stops is off the charts. I mean, that's the #1 place where it happens. Unfortunately, truck stops remain a frequent location of trafficking crimes. Truck stops are the most common place for trafficking victims, whether being transported, sold for illicit activities, or whatever. It's a dangerous place to have kids wait. It's not because we want a fancy truck stop there. That in effect advertises to the human traffickers, here's where they are. Why is trafficking such a problem? Because it's yes.
You've got about 10 seconds.
Oh, pollution, I didn't even get to that. The pollution from diesel trucks, the person putting this in, or the person representing him, that's just the person trying to put a Texas friendly face on this.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's the last I had on the list. If anyone else would like to say something for or against, just make sure you oh, I'm sorry, I do it. James Norton. Sorry.
My name's James Norton. I live at 785 Mesquite Road in Belton. I've lived there for many, many, many years. And I'm asking you very respectfully to please do not approve this change of zoning. First of all, heavy trucks entering the access road, there's a very short distance before they get to that truck stop. It's going to create a huge safety concern for those of us that live in the area, having heavy trucks zipping by all day and all night. As was mentioned previously, it's not a safe environment for us and our families and our children to have a truck stop in that location. I don't think anybody in Mesquite, certainly not I, object to having some sort of a business there, but not some kind of a truck stop. We don't want a 24-hour business making noise, keeping us up all night. And, you know, with all the stuff that goes on at a truck stop, some kind of a small business is fine, you know, that doesn't impact the way that we live and our lifestyles. And I'd like to thank you very much for hearing me out on this. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Next up, Nelda DeHolis. You'll let us know.
Nelda DeHolis, 306 Mesquite Lane. So my problem is I take that exit all the time, and it's not 1,300 square feet or feet to the when they proposed the other day, they said it's 1,300 feet to the deceleration lane, but it's only 900 feet from the end of the service to the end of the exit to Mesquite. And if you're like me, you're going to go to the first entrance that you can get to, and when you're turning into a convenience store, so everybody's going to try to scoot all the way over to get into the store, but they're going to have to turn on Mesquite. But my question is, so the deceleration lane and the trucks turn in there, how are the trucks going to get out? Because if you take a truck straight up to the gas station pumps, where are they going to turn around to get back out that same entrance? They're going to go back around down and then back across, which to me seems like semis on Mesquite is a very small road. I'm not sure. You see what I'm saying? Like if you park a 53-foot trailer with a cab semi truck that's 70 feet, according to that little chart thing, that's only 60 feet. That surpasses the gas pumps. So turning around to get out is not going to work. So they're gonna basically go around the store, down Mesquite, out, crossing more traffic, causing more problems with semis crossing each other. So either that, there has to be another exit further that way. All those truck stop parkings have to be gone. One of the restaurants needs to go away, something, because it's not going to work in the parking lot coming out. Anyway, like I've said a couple last year, I've come off that exit, literally had to go all the way around to Shanklin, come back around the loop just to be able to get to the far right lane. Anyway, I foresee accidents happening.
Thank you. All right, now I think we got the end of the list of those that signed up. Okay, you guys have some, okay.
My name is Byron Scott. I live at 488 Mesquite Road, and I actually own a trucking company. I drive a truck, and that's dangerous. Like, the only way that's gonna work is you guys need to consider putting like a ambulance, a EMT across the street or something, because that's gonna cause accidents. Like, if trucks attempt to take that exit, and like she said, once they come out, you got trucks trying to take the exit to get to this small deceleration lane to turn into this truck stop, but you also have trucks trying to get out and get back all the way over, because the on-ramp is, I'm not sure how many feet from that, but it's like right there. And I know last time we did this, somebody said that they actually went out there and looked at that. And if you guys would just consider going out there to just see the feasibility of that, like, that would be fine if it was a store, but the trucks, that's not a good idea. The truck part is bad. That is very, very bad. Like, if that was probably maybe another 1,000 foot down or something, then yes. But right there at the corner of Mesquite Road, that is very bad. That is going to cause a lot of accidents. That is going to be really, really bad trouble. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Michelle.
Video of the on the on-ramp. I don't know if there's any way you guys could play that.
I don't
Send
think
it to us.
Yeah, you can send it to us, to staff, and they can get it to us, but I mean, it's gonna be
Tricky to play.
it'll be, we can't.
Okay, well, yeah, I spoke about it last week, and the off-ramp, that exit from the Mesquite Road, it can't be that far as they were saying. It's very short, and that's why I took a video of it. Another thing is, as us being residents there, like, what happens when we're trying to leave to go to work or to school, with that being our only exit out? And like I said, it's a dead end road, so I don't understand how a truck would do a U-turn down there. But it's like, we love our neighborhood, and there's other areas to put truck stops at. And like I said, me and my husband own a trucking company. And for us to even be talking about this again, I think is just crazy, with it being this dangerous. So I just hope you guys can reconsider and just, like I said, come out there one day and just see what we're talking about, so you'll know exactly what's going on here. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. All right, anyone else wishes to speak for or against this item? All right, there being no one else to speak publicly, we will close the public hearing and reopen council meeting to consider this item. Motion, questions, discussion.
I'm just curious to know the parking spots on the left of there. Those look like truck parking spots, and I didn't know if they were gonna allow overnight or long-term, or what's the objective of those?
I will defer that to the applicant.
Mayor Pro Tem and council members, my name is Richard Mathias. I represent the owner and developer of this property. Just a little brief historical perspective. As you know, this came before you as a straight CH zoning application about a year ago, consistent with the adjacent CH zoning. I was not involved at that time. I don't know why the applicant's representative wasn't here at the council meeting. but I work with this company a lot in Austin area, and they asked me to take a look at this case. I've been doing this for over 40 years and they wanted another perspective. So I did some research. I looked at the testimony given by the neighborhoods, the council members' questions at the previous hearings, and tried to address each of those concerns and issues. And the result was, working with the city staff very closely, the development of a development agreement, which we could stipulate and you could hold us to particular issues that you see before you tonight. Just kind of wanted to get that perspective out there and introduce myself.
Okay.
So the question was,
The parking to the left.
yes, those are 16 spaces for large trucks. The plan is, this is not a truck stop. This is a travel center. You see these concepts, they're very different than truck stops. About 10% of their business is trucks. The other 90% is the traveling public. That's why they have this nice building, 2 restaurants and gift shop and supplies and groceries. That's the intent. Well, there will be some trucks. Yes, obviously. There are 16 spaces there. The plan is to have overnight parking if the truckers want it, if that's not a problem with the council. The condition would be that would only occur if they're open 24 hours. That decision hasn't been made. There'd be no parking unless the facility is monitored and there are personnel on the site. They have like 48 cameras, zoom lens capabilities, panic button that calls the Belton Police Department immediately. But the only time there would be parking overnight is if they are open.
Thank you. What's presented to us today is 24-hour truck stop that obviously would be overnight parking. I am concerned about that. We see the volume of trucks on I-35. We see the public rest stops that are just inundated with truckers looking for a place to rest overnight. Those vehicles are, and I don't understand a whole lot about trucking, but it appears as though those vehicles are constantly running while those guys are in there. I don't know, a shower facility there?
No.
Okay.
No, sir.
Just curious. I want to know all the details.
Sure.
But I'm concerned about overnight parking. I thought there was, we would hear from BISD about potential for the bus route and whether the bus could go down Mesquite instead of a pickup stop at the corner. I would much more be in favor of the bus having the ability to go down Mesquite and pick up students at a better area, to be honest. For me, I'm concerned about that. And then I worry about the transition from the back of that bus stop or back of that truck stop to a neighborhood. Light pollution, trucks potentially running 24 hours, and inflow and outflow. They're doing a lot with road and other things, but I just have some boxes that haven't been checked on my little list that worry me a little bit.
I just wanted to mention that we have heard back from BISD. They do pick up the students up right at the intersection of Mesquite. There's about 6 to 8 students that they pick up at that intersection. The reason for not going down Mesquite dead ends, and they need to find a way to turn around to get back down the road. So that's why they don't go down the road and pick them up at that intersection.
I understand. I thought there was some talk about expansion or improvement of Mesquite and whether the bus would be able to navigate that in the future if this was approved.
There's a regional plan to improve some other local streets in that area, Southwest Parkway, Shanklin, but unfortunately that's unfunded at the moment.
And lastly, one of the things that's been on our agenda as a council is a transition from specific either industrial, light industrial areas to neighborhoods, and that we try to manage that in the future and make that transition smooth and easy and not abrupt and difficult. And so those are just some areas of concern that I have.
Matthias, would you walk us through the traffic pattern, if you will, of a
Yes.
truck coming off the southbound I-35 and onto the access road, and how it's going to come in and how it's going to get to your pumps if it's a diesel?
Yes,
And
sir.
I realize that it's only about 10% of your traffic, but it's the biggest ones. So if you would walk us through that traffic pattern, and then how, if one of them does stop for either the 30-minute break or the overnight, if he's at the end of his driving day, then how's that going to work?
Sure. I appreciate those questions. We've met with TxDOT on this, and we've looked at the ramp location, Mesquite Drive location, and all the access. And the TxDOT's design, I mean, TxDOT placed that ramp there when Mesquite was already there. They took that into consideration in their design for safe traffic movements from the ramp to Mesquite. But for our particular development, no trucks are going to turn onto Mesquite. Not when there's a deceleration lane right in their view with their pumps right there on the interstate. And that driveway is over a quarter mile from the ramp, over 1,300 feet. And the minimum spacing under today's standards, which are much stricter than they used to be, under today's standards, is a driveway within 460 feet from the ramp is adequate. This is a freeway, it's an interstate. They take into consideration that these are semi trucks utilizing it. So traffic will exit the ramp from the main lanes about 1,300 feet north of the site. They will come off the ramp and they will move to the right, take the deceleration lane, which provides adequate stacking for as many as 8 rigs, although you never have that at one time, and turn right into the driveway and straight to the pumps. They would gas up, they would either park for overnight or a nap, or they would come straight through and back out to the driveway on the top to Mesquite, take a right. Their GPS is going to show them that there's no exit, no reason to turn left on the Mesquite. They're going to come back out to the right at the stop sign. When it's safe, they will pull out and head south on the frontage road.
So they'll enter through the decel lane.
Correct.
And they'll come to the pumps, which are on the left or south end of the establishment.
Right in line with that
And
driveway.
whenever they're done with fueling up or with a break, a rest break, they'll come back around behind that to the west side of the buildings and come out to the entrance, one of the 2 entrance exits on Mesquite Road, and turn right on Mesquite, and then come down and re-enter the access road there at Mesquite, which of course you guys have offered to completely
Yes,
redo.
Yeah, that's going to be expanded to a 36-foot paved section. That's a very large paved section. We're building the entire section. And the reason for the 2 driveways is to separate the larger truck traffic on the west end, as you just described,
Right,
from the domestic traffic on the driveway closest to the freeway frontage road. But yes, that's exactly how they would maneuver, and that's more than adequate maneuvering space for that.
And just a second. So we had a public hearing that you guys had a chance to speak, and no one talked over anyone who was speaking. We're now in council deliberations, so this is our deliberation time, and so we would ask you guys not to interrupt as we deliberate and ask questions. So, thank you.
And if I didn't state it, I'd like to state it for the record. The current spacing from our proposed driveway from the ramp is more than 3 times the requirement TxDOT has for safe traffic maneuvering from the ramp onto the frontage road.
Would you also address the distance from Mesquite Road to the on-ramp on the southbound lane, please?
Oh boy. Yeah, I don't have that number. I did look at it. It's more than it's well beyond the minimum required by TxDOT.
Well, I drove both of them earlier today,
Yeah.
but now I'm in a mid-sized SUV. I'm not in an 18-wheeler, but they both seemed comfortable to me, very comfortable, both the off-ramp.
They are.
And then certainly accelerating back up onto southbound I-35 seemed like it had.
Don't quote me on this, but I'm going off my memory, looking at the ramp map. Because I took some measurements and I looked at the design criteria and we discussed it with TxDOT.
Yes, sir.
They said this is more than ample. I want to say it's 1,000 feet.
981.
Is very good. There you go. That's, I think the minimum for what we call behind the gore, you know, the behind the ramp is like 300 or 400 feet.
Okay. But
And
this is 981.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mayor,
For me, just
Just say, oh. Stephanie was about to speak and then Wayne,
Got
and
it.
so let's go off on, let's go with Wayne and then we'll go Stephanie and then Daniel.
okay, didn't mean to jump in there. I'm a little delayed, I think. It's a long way to Mexico. Mr. Scott's objections as a seasoned truck driver, did staff feel, I know he brought that up at the previous meeting, did staff feel like that was adequately addressed in this revision?
Yeah.
This is more of a TxDOT territory than, we looked at the distances to make sure, again, it meets some space in the requirement. But TxDOT is really in control of that frontage road and their regulations have to be met. So TxDOT's really the reviewing authority for that intersection and that location of that access. And they have reviewed the plans and have provided preliminary review and have approved what was submitted.
Thank you. That's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure that I was on track.
Thanks, Wayne.
I think my concern, I share much of what John spoke of earlier, but I'm one of the ones that went and drove it last time. And it's a little scary to cut over really quickly across all those lanes to turn on to Mesquite. And I think that's been one of my concerns all along, is just that exit and getting off and getting over. And if it's challenging now with neighbors only, with the increased traffic, what does that really look like? And it takes a while for the big semis to slow down. That's not my area of expertise by any means, but we all drive the highways and we all see what that can be like. So I'm concerned about that.
Daniel.
Yeah, first of all, I mean, I talked to Mike Morgan today about moving the bus stop. They hadn't evaluated moving the bus stop to the T at Mesquite Lane and Mesquite Road. It is adequately wide enough to do a 3-point bus stop where they turn in, load kids, and then back up. I know I used to drive for the school district, so their rules are you can't back up with kids outside. So once they load them, or they'll do the back at drop off, they do the backup first and then unload kids. So I mean, it's feasible, it's doable. As a parent in that neighborhood, no matter what development occurs, whether it's this or retail or anything, I would encourage you to petition BIC to move that school bus stop, period, off the interstate. That's just my feelings, having 3 little ones, one of them in school. And so beyond that point,
He's addressing us.
no, I'm just encouraging you. Yes. As a parent, I want to know, from a public works standpoint, just a refresher on everything, that the developer is going to provide. How wide the road, how far drainage, the drainage in the front, because when I drove it today, it doesn't seem to make sense where the drainage is going to go, because
Sidewalks.
so just if somebody can just highlight those points.
Sure. From a public works standpoint, we do have a capital improvement plan for drainage improvements, stormwater drainage improvements off of Mesquite that will be fully handled with this. I don't recall the full width of it, but the entire frontage of that property, that northern frontage that fronts Mesquite, they will develop that stormwater drainage improvements and also the 36-foot wide paving section that's required for a minor collector roadway for that. Sidewalks will also be provided on Mesquite and also on the frontage road. Along the frontage road, a 6-foot sidewalk is also required along that frontage.
The decel lane has been mentioned already, but that's certainly another significant provision to make sure access from the interstate to the property is adequately provided. Infrastructure beyond that, the septic tank will serve the site initially right now, and they have committed to provide a sewer easement and then commitment to sewer line extension across the full width of the property at such time that sewer is available to the site, and then convert the septic tank to full sewer.
Mr. Matthias, just one question from me. How would the applicant feel about a prohibition against overnight parking for the truckers?
They wouldn't like it. I mean, they're being honest. They're just saying, look, we want to, federal regulations, these truckers need a place to sleep. Something they can only drive so many hours. It doesn't mean that they're going to be there, at midnight. They could be taking a nap during the day. It's just hard to say. They're trying to be as accommodating to their customers as they can. And some truckers will want to, park overnight. We would be agreeable if 16 spaces is too much. We could cut it by 25% down to 12 if that helps. But to eliminate all of it, again, I would just stress that this will be a attended site. It will be open. There'll be down lighting, but it'll be well lit, but with down lighting, be monitored. But to be honest, they don't want to prohibit that opportunity. I mean, if the council feels that's important, we respect, your
Mr. Matthias,
decision.
would the owners be willing to consider increasing the fence both in height and in construction depth or whatever to also be a better barrier, a noise barrier, as well as, I mean, we all know how long wooden fences don't last very long in Texas. And so 5 years from now, that a wood fence that's not properly maintained will be in tatters.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop a whole lot of noise. So,
Well, it doesn't. And one of the things we are planting will be, a solid hedge, if you will, like a red tip photinia, which grows 10, 12 feet high and is very thick. That is your best sound buffer. I'm not demeaning the other residents further to the east. And I'm not making light of their concerns because I do respect their concerns. But this is a rural residential area, large acreage tracts in the county. It's sparsely populated. It's not that much density. I'm not making light of that, but I am stating that there's not a lot of homes up against this property. They are several hundred feet away. There is one property that adjoins us, one residence that adjoins this property. So it's not like there's multiple tracks, your typical suburban development. This is a very rural county area. They're in the county and they're large acreage tracts.
Is the owner of that one adjoining residence here tonight, or have they provided us?
I'm just gonna say, we've already done the public hearing, so I don't.
Well, we can ask. Okay. Yeah,
but to answer your question, I don't know what else we could do. I don't know if going from 8 feet to 20 feet is going to make any difference as far as noise buffering. But again, I really want to keep it in. We can look at a map and see, they're several hundred feet away from this site, with the exception of 1 or 2 homes. And again, I'm not saying that they don't deserve protection. Don't misunderstand me, but but we would be open to that if it wouldn't impede on the layout of the site. We would be open to increasing that, and would commit to the staff that we will look at that and demonstrate that we either can't and why we can't, or we would do it.
Thanks.
We do this on I-14 with the truck stop, back to John's point about the overnight parking, and I still feel the same way John does about the overnight parking. You drive down Gerald, that would be my biggest concern is those that are intended to be truck stops get overrun. They start parking on the driveways, they start parking on the streets. I mean, they park on the on and off ramps at that Gerald truck stop. And that's my biggest concern with the overnight parking. And then twofold to that, you said it'd only be allowed if it was 24-hour. Well, I think you'd have a bigger problem if you weren't 24-hour, because now it's not monitored and not manned. Yeah, you can look at their license plate, but there's no recourse for that. So, I mean, I think you're better off being 24-hour with no overnight parking is the way I would go. I think you can have the spaces for people to park. They want to go in, they get a bite and convenience store stuff, whatever they do, get fuel. But the overnight parking is, I mean, that is a lot. It's a lot. And then we've been down this road before, and I think we've kind of set our own little, what we feel is appropriate. Now this is I-35, a lot more traffic, so people could have different opinions.
I think from a bigger picture, higher level, we're talking about an I-35 frontage property that is currently zoned agriculture, but naturally all of that is going to become commercial highway or something near that. I don't think that a travel center is inappropriate. I think that we've got to defer to TxDOT on how many feet are required for access from this ramp or that ramp or whatever. It seems like there's a solution there with the ISD potentially with the bus stop, and I think that the fence and the red tip photinias are about as good a solution as you can come up with as far as a buffer there. You're kind of doubling up on your buffer from what we typically require when you have different zonings bumping up against each other. And so for me, really the only concern I have is overnight parking.
In I-35 frontage, that could be light industrial, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and those 24-hour traffic flow or lights or running trucks is what. Also, just looking at the road requirements for Mesquite, that would just be, I believe, hot mix asphalt is what I read, and the trucks being diverted out that way, turning onto Mesquite. I'm not sure how long that would last, but I worry about the maintaining that street and.
Street would be designed to meet our street section, curb and gutter, sidewalk, asphalt street, but certainly would meet all our design specifications for the street. Certainly a potential for on-street prohibition of parking of the vehicles along the street would be another possibility to address that concern. Keeping the parking interior to the site would certainly be something that could be ensured to, again, provide free flow to the neighborhood for traffic in and out of Mesquite. So, again, there are a number of provisions that we can do operationally to try to address some of those matters.
Yeah, this is, again, as you guys that have implied, this is not the first time we've discussed this. This is the second time, and the first time it failed. And they've come back to address most of the issues that were brought up at that time. And it looks like the applicant has in good faith worked to try to address those. It doesn't address where you live and where they put their center. It doesn't address that. The challenge in anything like this is property rights, my property rights and your property rights. And is it only the division between my property and your property that stops, right? So I can do anything I want to on my property, right? Unless it bothers you. But at what point where do you draw that line? And it puts the council and the Planning and Zoning Commission in the tension. And we feel the tension with you on both sides. Some of us have worked in businesses and we've had to make tough business decisions. And many of us live in neighborhoods. And for me, I live on Loop 121. I don't know how many of you guys have to drive on Loop 121, but it is a neighborhood in transition. And so I many times I have to wait 3 to 5 minutes just to get out of my driveway and pray to God I don't get hit as I pull out. And so, and I've been hit once. And so, so we understand all of that, and it's tough. We end up bringing our own personal preference on property rights and neighborhoods and the value of that. We wanted to let you know, like Dave said, this is going to be a neighborhood in transition. So if it's not going to be this, it's going to be something. And at some point in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 80 years, it will be primarily commercial all up and down I-35 from San Antonio to Dallas. And so if you're close to that, that's the nature of it. And so we try to mete out some level of wisdom and work with the staff to come up with reasonable solutions. I'm not making any motions. I just wanted to share that. And again, appreciate everyone who's come out and voiced their opinion, wherever the chips fall. So the chair would entertain a motion on item number 7.
I have another question. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Less than 10% of the business is trucking? Is that what you said?
No, I said about 10%.
About 10%.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. Any consideration of just eliminating that?
No. I mean, that's a high demand business. And,
10%.
you know, but I mean, you can just look at the layout and see it's not designed for a lot of trucks. But some trucking is important. This is I-35. This is a
eliminating-
major trucking corridor.
We get that. And no eliminating the overnight.
Well,
period.
we would prefer not to. No. I mean,
Okay, thank you.
I think we're at a point though, it's a PD. That's
We
on
can-
us.
You guys can make,
Yeah.
you guys can make the motion the way you wish to make the motion.
If I may make one more comment. It seems to me that if this goes in at all, that we don't want it unmanned any period of the day, because it certainly would not be gated. It would be open for folks just to pull in and park. So we want folks there monitoring the 42, is it cameras? 48 cameras. And having a very close relationship in both training and reporting with our Belton Police Department. And so that the things that we're all concerned about don't get a start. And indeed, it becomes a reputation like we have for much of our town, that this is not the place to be nefarious. It's not going to work out well for you. Go someplace else.
I fear I don't think we can bind the developer on the operational limits of that store. So if someone were to buy it or lease it in a future date and decide not to have 24 hours, I don't think we've got the governance to be able to say you have to stay open.
No, I don't think we can say you have to, but I don't think we want to limit them from being 24 hours, because I think it's in the best interest of the city for it to be 24 hours.
Yeah, and
That's my comment.
yeah, I don't think anyone was suggesting that they wouldn't be open 24 hours. It's just that while trucks could stay there, there would be a no overnight parking. I think that's what I heard.
And I know the trucks are getting more advanced, and most of them have generators. A lot of them have generators. Whether they do or don't, it could be an option here too, is no overnight idling of main engine. Because there is generator. So I mean, there's ways to spin it, but.
Not sure I understood what you said. Would you repeat it, please?
So generator, onboard generator.
Right.
For overnight sleeping, to where you're not idling.
APU.
Yeah, basically APU, yeah. Instead of main engine idle.
I do think it's in both in terms of noise, but also for security and comfort of the neighborhood to have the taller, more substantial fence that's also a noise barrier, because I think it's also helps with the security. And if you've got 48 cameras where you can see the sides of the trucks and all, and it's not easy to walk in and out of there. And I just think that's important that we include that.
I don't know if it's appropriate, Mayor, just to make a comment, comment on Mr. Pearson's comment. I think he made a very astute point in that one way to encourage this to be 24 hours is to allow the overnight parking, because they will not leave this site unattended.
Yeah.
With parking, with vehicles there. They want to monitor it. So that may be a way,
Thank
that
you.
may actually help.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Chair would entertain a motion.
Greg, were you suggesting a taller fence?
I was, you and I can look over a 6-foot fence. I would, it seemed to me at 8 foot is appropriate with whatever is appropriate for the noise attenuation. Now, we're not trying to create a quiet room or anything like that, but I think something like what we did with the other trunk stuff down on I-14 on the south side of I-14. That
I believe it was an 8-foot wooden fence that they were required.
Well, so I think we can go back and negotiate that, understanding the intent is both noise attenuation and enhanced security, not just wood. Or not just, a 6-foot wood fence. Because I think that helps the neighborhood as well.
It is a component of the development agreement, so if you want to change that, you really ought to include that in your motion so that the amendment, that the planned development district would include, it includes reference to the conditions, and so if you want an 8-foot fence, you need to state that as part of your motion.
Would it be enough to say a minimum of 8 foot? With noise attenuation for security and noise attenuation? And I don't know, I'm not an engineer, certainly not an acoustic engineer. I don't know.
I mean, I guess the next option would be a masonry fence. If you're looking to beef it up, right?
I think this is one of those areas though, like to his point, there's only one property and that judging by looks, and it is in of itself a business that they're running out of the shop. And so I don't think this is an HEB, stone masonry type application to me. I think the 8-foot fence would be adequate.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion, but that doesn't help.
Yeah.
If this was designed primarily as a travel center as opposed to primarily a truck stop, the applicant did mention the possibility of going to 12 spaces as opposed to 16. That might cut down on some of the concerns that residents might have.
Thanks, Wayne.
Just a couple of quick comments. The discussion about the fence again, if you feel like that's important to include that in the motion. On the landscape screen that is being discussed is at 8-foot width. Another aspect that you might include would be a minimum height at time of planting. I mean, you can have very small photinias, or you can have 4 foot or 5 foot at time of planting, and they grow pretty quickly. So again, trying to achieve that separation, that transition and buffer can be important. So minimum size of plants and 8-foot fence could again address that buffer.
Yeah, so my original concerns. I think that the deceleration lane is a big step towards making it safer. Having sidewalks as part of this also helps maintain a level of safety where we have a mixture. I do believe that the city will have to spend some significant money on Mesquite. Again, I used Love's Truck Stop near Troy as an example, almost the same design where they come on and then they exit the public road, which was a county road, and which was not designed for this kind of frequency and weight. And because of the type of soil that's going to be there, it needs to be a pretty significant concrete, not asphalt road, that if this does go in, there will be a burden on the citizens to make sure that road is built as part of this. So I do, and I hear the concerns, and it went through planning and zoning. I don't know, was it unanimous? It was unanimous approved for it. And so we would have to override. Well, I guess we don't have to override them. And we'd have 3/4 vote if we had to override them from a negative to a positive, but all we have to do is disapprove.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna throw a motion at it unless Sam.
Well, I think they just had a discussion about the motion or not.
The developer, and it's approved, spending
Significant amount of money.
significant amount of money. But I think the maintenance, if you want to do this, there are ways to make that portion that's gonna be traveled by the trucks coming around to make that last much, much longer than a typical section. I have to speak to that better, but that's also something.
I think it was a comment earlier, maybe Councilmember Holmes had mentioned. This is gonna be a collector roadway, but that's what its future will be. So if you think about your local street, that's what we've done, a typical mill and overlay, that's type D asphalt. This will have to be type C, so it's a stronger aggregate. We could also go up a level to type B, which is like your interstates or right on type B aggregate. That comment had come up previously as a question, and I think it's certainly something that we would look into during design, that road is stout enough. I mean, we kind of caught that as soon as it came in, the route, and that's why we initially requested from the developer, any road improvements must go all the way up to the furthest entrance and be on both sides of the road. Because ultimately, if they just did half their road, like some developments are required to, it would be null and void at that point. So definitely ways that we can hold the developer as it gets going to a higher, I guess, road quality that is sufficient with making sure that and Mayor mentioned kind of the soil, that geotech will tell us a lot as we get going on that engineering as well. So.
Yeah, our citizens should not pick up the tab for that road now or 5 years from now. So I don't know how we word that, John, to get it right.
I'd be confident saying that will be addressed during design.
Very well.
We understand the nature and what's going to be on this road, and that will be addressed during design.
All right, the chair
Yeah.
would entertain a motion.
So, yeah, and so before my motion, but I got, of all the emails, I do appreciate you guys reaching out and being passionate. It always helps. It's always endearing. There was one comment that said, look out for all Beltonians. And so in that matter, it's hard for us to also ignore the amount of money that's going to be spent that we don't have to tab up off of tax dollars at some point. And I think that goes a long way. And, we love developers that work with us. It creates a good relationship. But we also are trying to do as much as we can for the residents around the developments. Unfortunately, I can't argue that this isn't a good spot, because this is a good spot for this type of development because it's I-35. So therefore I motion that we approve the agenda item as presented with stipulations on the PD for 8-foot fence, 6-foot at plant landscape screening. And if we can put it in there, type B asphalt. And then
On Mesquite.
yeah, on the design on Mesquite. We don't control the front of this concrete on the frontage already. So and then I'm gonna throw it in as no overnight parking. And if you guys vote that down and go for a new one, that's my 4 stipulations on the PD.
All right.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the item with those stipulations. If anyone wishes to amend this motion without, this motion can be amended and had to be voted on separately.
Well, I mean, obviously you're gonna have people pulling and parking. I mean, now that you asked that question, I don't know. I guess I'd rather.
Yeah, the only way, honestly, for discussion on the amendment, or on the motion, I think overnight parking, we would have to determine, you cannot be parked more than X number of hours between this hour and that hour. So like, you could say 6 hours parking between the hours is 11 PM and 4 AM is defined as overnight. So anybody who went through that, but if somebody comes in at 3:30 and they park for 6 hours, You know, is that overnight? Well, now it's in the day. I think overnight is a complicated definition and it would be very difficult to enforce.
Is an easier one, no idling.
Well, you made a motion and it got a second, so
Yeah,
we
I
can
know.
either amend the motion or we can vote in favor of the motion or we can disapprove the motion. So. I'm just trying to, what we do, keep us between the gutters. Any,
I'm open to an amendment on the motion, but wouldn't know how to make it.
well, the motion as it stands is as presented with no overnight parking. Any other discussion before we vote? All in favor, say aye.
Go ahead.
Oh, wait, go ahead, Wayne. Go ahead.
I appreciate Daniel's motion. I'm just concerned that closing it down and not having people on staff to monitor the situation overnight might create more issues than it might solve.
All right.
As we consider the motion.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Matthias, if there's no overnight parking, that doesn't mean there's not overnight activity. So it doesn't mean that it's going to close or that it would close.
That's correct. It does not necessarily mean that it will close. It will just give them more reason to do so if necessary. In other words, if they don't have vehicles there parking overnight, there's no need for them to be there if there's not a other demand. You know, so hypothetically, let's just say that, well, there's not that much traffic. You know, we don't need to be open 24 hours. We don't have trucks, so we don't need to be open to monitor them. Therefore, let's close.
Well,
But
cars, I mean.
Right.
Will the pumps be able to, can you pull up and throw a credit card in there and get gas?
While they're closed?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure. I would say no. I don't think the developer they're making a pretty hefty investment here. I don't think they want.
I think, yeah, we've had a lot of discussion around this. We have a motion, we have a second. We need to keep it back here until we resolve this motion up or down, or amended this motion up or down. So right now we have the motion as it stands. We don't have a proposed amendment. All in favor of the motion as it stands currently, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Aye.
Aye.
Right. We had 2 ayes, Daniel and Dave, and then the rest were ayes to approve, but to disapprove, which were nays. So that motion fails 2-5. I guess since that was an amended from what was on the agenda, if anyone wants to make a different motion or a motion to disapprove, I would appreciate that we would not just let it land.
Right.
I would rather us have a motion to disapprove it than to just not approve it, because it just leaves it in limbo. Because it's the second time for them to come forward. So I think we need to probably make a stand on this one.
I move we disapprove a travel center with 24-hour parking and service.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to disapprove the proposed development on I-35. Any other comments or discussion?
The motion was to disapprove a 24-hour.
It was, yeah. Disapprove the item as presented.
Okay.
I think that, well, I've said my piece. I think that something like this is really close to being right. And I hate to see it just go down with the disapproval without any direction to make it, to get it there.
Can we do, I mean, we've made a motion in a second.
Motion second. So, yeah, so again, we could pass it or it could fail. So all in favor for disapproval of item Z 2404, item 7, all in favor of disapproval, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. 3. Those who are against disapproval.
Aye.
Aye. 4. So The disapproval was disapproved. 5-4-3. So
I will make another motion to approve the item as presented for the PD 8-foot fence, 6-foot planting or vegetation at plant, type V asphalt, and reduce the parking space from 16 to 12.
all right. We have a motion with stipulations on the plan development as they were presented. I did not have those all memorized. 6-foot, 8-foot, 12, 16.
fence.
Yeah. Yeah.
You reduce the number of truck parking.
Yeah.
And type B, pavement.
All right. All right. Any other? We have a motion. Now we need do we have a second?
Second.
We have his motion and a second from Wayne. All right. I'm not even counting how many times we've had motions. So any other discussion before we vote? All right. All in favor of the motion as presented, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
4-3. It passes 4-3.
That's not that's some. Can we?
No, so we just that motion passed 4-3.
Okay, I
So
heard eyes from the crowd. I just wanted to.
No. You heard it from Wayne.
So
Another eyes from the crowd.
the
Roll call.
the ones for were Wayne, David, Craig, and Daniel, and the ones against were me, John, and Stephanie. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. 4-3. Guys, this is tough.
It is tough.
It's complicated.
Thank y'all for all your help.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I know it's a hard decision. Thank y'all for all your help. That was a pretty easy decision. Y'all got some dead people at the end of that road. The problem is, turning out here, trying to get back over.
We appreciate, we do appreciate it and we understand it's very sensitive. So thank you guys for coming. All right. Item 8 is considered the final plat for Unity 4 comprising 7.51 acres located at the southwest intersection of Interstate 35 Frontage Road and Mesquite Drive. All right, Ms. Tina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the subdivision plat for the previous zoning case. For water, this is in the Belton CCN. There's a 14-inch water line that's available. For sewer, this is in the city CCN. Wastewater line is not available at the location. On-site sewage facility is currently proposed, which will require the approval from the Bell County Health District. The developer, as part of the development agreement, agrees to dedicate the wastewater easement and also to construct the sewer connection through their site to the adjacent property when that line is available. They will also pay to decommission that sewer line at the septic at that time. For perimeter street improvements, Mesquite is again a minor collector, 60 feet of right of way. Currently, there isn't a right of way dedication required. They previously dedicated 13 feet of right of way a while ago. Developer will construct the full width of improvements that's required for Mesquite, 36 feet of pavement, curb gutter, and 5-foot sidewalk for the full distance of the property. TxDOT is control of I-35. Developer is required to put in a 6-foot wide sidewalk along that frontage road. And again, that deceleration lane is a requirement with the subdivision plat that requires TxDOT approval that will be provided with this development. Drainage, again, there's drainage on the site that's in the floodplain, and also the developer will construct a city design public drainage improvements on Mesquite Road. Here is a look at the final plat. Again, this was 2 lots that's being platted into 1. With that, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of that final plat, subject to the approval of the zoning change, conditions from the city letter that went out over a year ago, and also the improvements that's included in the development agreement are also required. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Where do we need to codify the reduction in the parking places?
That was what the zoning change.
This is really a flat, but it wouldn't hurt to put that in there. It certainly wouldn't hurt to put the part about the improved stability of the roadway.
Right.
Type B street here and reduction in the number of spaces of permanent parking. And we'll get that translated into the development agreement as well, so that they reflect each other.
Good.
And also the height of the fence buffer.
The question I have is not just the dedication of the wastewater easement, but it's stated that they will pay to get it to, not to and through, but if we get it to, they will get it through.
To and through.
How do you enforce that when they sell the property in 6 weeks or 6 months or 6 years? I don't believe that we can have them because there's not a requirement that they maintain the property until that happens. And so if they are the developer, the only way we could do that is that they would go ahead and put in a sewer line that's tapped on both ends, and we would have to meet it where it is, or to not have the requirement. But I don't know that you can, or you put in some money into an escrow or something, but I don't know that you can force somebody to do something at some magical date in the future.
Mayor, we anticipated that this agreement would be filed at the county as part of the property record. We thought that would be an appropriate approach.
Yeah, I understood that. I understand that you could file it, but the reality is if I were to purchase the property, I don't know.
Are you purchasing the agreement too?
Yeah, that's right. And I guess if there's a deed, it gets muddy. Okay.
And that, so basically you purchase everything we put in place.
Okay. So the person who purchases that would then, when they go down to Monteith Abstract, somebody's going to find that and say, oh, by the way.
I think you should.
Yeah. The challenge of putting it in now is the design and exactly where the sewer line, where that might be, as you know. The other, an alternative would be to calculate the cost of what it would be to go across the property now. We wouldn't get full recovery because we don't know when it'll actually be done, but you could require that money up front. But those are certainly challenges of development of this piece of property. Certainly we have a commitment. We just need to try to find a way to ensure that commitment is realized.
I'm taking John's word on trusting John's word.
Yeah, that John. All right. Any other comments, questions, or the chair would entertain a motion? And I think the suggestion is to beef up the motion to make sure we say what we need to say.
I'll go ahead and make the motions. Have all the remembrance in my head. I recommend we approve the item as is, but edit the site plan to include the 8-foot privacy fence, the 6-foot vegetation at time of plant, the type B asphalt on Mesquite Road, and the reduction in truck parking spaces from 16 to 12.
And deed restriction, or whatever
the
it
development
takes
agreement for the,
and file the deed restriction
Right.
with the plat, or the development agreement with the plat.
to ensure the provision of the sewer line at time to
That-
go
that
to
part.
and through, the property.
What he said.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, and a second to approve this item with the stipulations from the prior motion. Any comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh,
Aye.
okay, so again, 5-2. All right, that was 5-2. All right. Anybody need a breather? Okay, keep on going. All right. Item 9, receive a presentation on the annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2023. Mr. Rogers.
All right. Enough about truck stops. Let's talk something exciting.
Truck stop.
The travel center.
I'm sorry, travel center. Mayor and council, I'm very pleased to give you our annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year 2023. Our auditor, Christy Davis, standing behind me now, she and I will do a presentation of the results of FY23.
Hey, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to join you this evening. And I also want to give a big thank you to Mike and the finance department for all their assistance for the audit. So the results of this audit is their hard work and dedication during the year, and also being available for us as we work through our questions and information with them. You'll see here, we're going to go through the audit scope and results. So just a reminder, the financial statements that you have in front of you are the responsibility of management. We come in and conduct an audit over those financial statements to be able to provide an opinion that users of those financial statements want to rely upon. Our audit procedures include the items that are listed here. So we do pick several different things throughout the financial statements themselves, including dollar amounts and disclosures, and obtain and examine evidence to make sure the information that's been provided to us is complete and accurate. We look at accounting principles that are used and accounting estimates that are made by management, make sure they're following any requirements from standards or laws or regulations, and also make sure they're in conformity and what we typically see within municipalities. I did list here, as you read through the report, there was a new accounting standard that was required to be adopted this year. It's over subscription-based information technology arrangements, which is fancy for software arrangements or contracts. This adoption of the standard follows very closely the lease standard that was required to be adopted by the city in the previous year. So you might remember now they want assets and liabilities set up related to these contracts to kind of track and see what all cities are getting involved in. And then lastly, we step back and look at the overall financial statement presentation and make sure it tells the accurate story of the city for the year. So I mentioned management does make selection of accounting estimates, and we review those for completeness, reasonableness, and accuracy. And so for the city, the three largest significant accounting estimates are listed here. The first one is collectability of any accounts receivable, the capital assets, the carrying amounts, and depreciation methods for those. And then lastly, the pension and OPEB liabilities and the related outflows and inflows, and all of those come from a third-party actuary. I did want to make one mention when you're reviewing this information compared to what was provided to you throughout the year. We did have one adjustment we made as part of the audit related to the Texas Parks and Wildlife Grant to record some receivable and revenues based on a reimbursement request.
Okay, I'll take the blame for that one. We received a $750,000 payment in December of 23, and I forgot to record a receivable for that. So that's all on me.
That's all.
Yeah, that's what I did when you found.
Yeah, well, yeah, 750 overall, that is not bad. So as a result of all of those procedures, we did provide a clean or unmodified opinion. We just have a little extract here that does say these financial statements for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2023 are fairly presented in all material respects. Our audit procedures also extend past the financial statements to review compliance with laws and regulations that the city is required to adhere to. And specifically, we look at compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act and also state competitive bidding requirements. And pleased to report, we did not have any instances of non-compliance over those procedures. Also based on expenditures of federal and this year state awards for the city, we were also required to do a federal and state single audit. We did provide a clean or unmodified opinion on the city's compliance with those compliance requirements for the specific federal and state programs that we were required to test. I do have them listed here. So from a federal standpoint, we were required to look at the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, or they call that SLRF. And from the state perspective, the Texas Parks and Wildlife Grant. And then lastly, we do look at both internal control over financial reporting, as well as internal control over the compliance matters that we listed there, Public Funds Investment Act, state competitive bidding, and federal and state award expenditures. So a lot of different things that we look at, a lot of different individuals that we speak to as part of that audit. And again, pleased to report no deficiencies or weaknesses in controls identified.
Thank you, Christy. So I'll spend a few minutes going over the results of the year. Encourage you to go online and look at our full report. So for fiscal 23, the financial position of the city as a whole, this is all funds, full accrual, accounting. Our fund balance increased by just over $10 million for the year, ending with $107,913,000 of net position, which is essentially fund balance, if you will. That 107 million is divided into these categories. We have $75 million invested in capital assets. That's roads, water lines, and other infrastructure. There's $4.3 million that have external restrictions on how we can spend the money. And then lastly, that's $27.6 million of unrestricted net position. That's money that we can spend in accordance with law. So looking at the funds themselves, the general fund had $1.9 million more revenue than expenditures for the year. And what really drove that was property tax revenue and sales tax revenue had pretty significant jumps there. Also, interest income was nearly $500,000 in this fund in fiscal 23. A big part of that $1.9 million. Fund balance, unassigned fund balance in this fund was up just short of $8.7 million, or 40.4% of budgeted expenditures. The debt service fund paid $1.1 million of debt payments during the year. Fund balance is about $26,000 at the end of the year for there.
So real quick question.
Yes, sir.
You said roughly 27 million of unrestricted and 5 million of restricted. That's all cash. So when you say we had 500,000 in interest income, that was just in that fund. That's not all interest for all.
Correct.
funds.
No. Okay. Absolutely not.
I just wanted to.
No, that's correct.
Yeah.
This 500 in interest is just in the general fund alone.
Yeah.
I think the total for the year was close to 2 million for all funds. Amazing the turnaround there. We have two TERS funds. The TERS operating fund had $198,000 of net income during the year, but the TERS capital projects fund, if you will, had a net loss, but this is not a bad thing, of 3.2 million because we constructed Heritage Park and Southwest Parkway during FY23. Two amazing projects that we're glad that those are done. The hotel occupancy tax fund has net income of $204,000. Now that has a fund balance of $810,000 in it. Our ARPA grant fund had $2.8 million worth of revenue and $2.5 million worth of expenses in fiscal 23. And all of our capital projects fund reserves brought in $1,071,000 more than they spent during FY23 as a whole of all of the capital project funds. Going on to the water and sewer fund. The water and sewer fund that's reported in the annual report is actually several water and sewer related funds rolled into one. It's kind of smushed together. And the combined net income of all of those funds smushed together is 3.4 million for FY23. When you're just looking at the operating side alone, operating revenues were 12.4 million and operating expenses were just over 10 million for the year in the water and sewer fund. So in the end, the combined water and sewer fund had unrestricted fund balance of 14,750,000. And that's broken down into these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 funds. So the water and sewer operating fund had ended the year with $6,459,000 of unrestricted fund balance. The water and sewer capital projects funds had 6.6 million. We're also been placing money, setting aside money in a water meter replacement fund. And that had 1.2 million at end of the year. And the equipment replacement fund related to water and sewer was 388,000. Those two small negative numbers you see there, basically unspent proceeds, or not even unspent proceeds. It's accounts payable within our two bond funds that are outstanding. Just more of an accounting thing. Nothing to be concerned about there. On the drainage fund side, drainage revenues were 571,000 for the year, 606,000 worth of expenses during the year. So there was a slight draw of fund balance during fiscal 23. it still ended the year $1,269,000 of unrestricted fund balance. We have two internal service funds. The IT fund had net income of $211,000 for the year. That means essentially other funds contributed $211,000 more into that fund than it was spent during the year. And the building maintenance fund also had $93,000 of net income for the year. Remember, these two internal service funds have to build some reserves for those future outlay, future capital items. Like, in the IT fund, when they're buying switches and servers, it's a couple of $100,000 there in expenditures that they have to build up for. The last one I'll talk about is our Economic Development Corporation, which is a component unit of the city. BDC reported net income of $4.2 million for the year. And $1.1 million of that, a quarter of that, is due to the sale of property, a gain on the sale of assets. They ended with total fund balance of $19 million. 16.9 of that is unrestricted. You can look at that unrestricted number, and it's broken down into these three funds. So the BDC operating fund had $9,861,000 of unrestricted fund balance. Its capital projects fund had 5.2 million. Be aware, though, that 5.2 million, almost all of that, all about 800,000 of that, has been allocated to projects already. The incentives fund of 1.8 million of unrestricted fund balance, also almost all of that, essentially all of that, has been assigned for future incentives. That's a breakdown of that. So that was a quick and dirty look at the finances for FY23. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Christie's here if you have any questions of our auditor.
Mike, just real quick, water and sewer fund, do you know off the top of your head what of that account balance is the unrestricted, like you posted for the general fund? I think we were up to 40% of unrestricted fund.
Yes, that number is, I have that.
That is pretty high.
It's right at 50% of budgeted reserve, budgeted expenditures for FY23. Is that 6.4 million?
And then just one other comment, and that is drainage fund, the unrestricted fund balance of 1.269 million. Remember when we implemented that, and we're talking about increasing that rate and hoping that we wouldn't have a big accumulated balance in that fund, but we would have expenditures for that. And so, but we're working on ways to spend that for our citizens.
Correct. Yeah, there's a very large project on the way.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Anything else?
All right.
Thank you.
No other comments or questions? This was just a report. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming and experiencing the fun of city council meetings before. All right.
2 weeks if you want more.
Yeah. All right. Item 10, also, Mr. Rogers will be presenting and discussing the reallocation of unspent funding received from the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, part of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 to certain projects.
Okay, so let's talk about ARPA funding. The city of Belton received $5,681,000 of ARPA funding. We got $2.8 million of in August of 2021, another $2.8 million in September of a year later in September 22. And we got this little straggler $5,603 payment in April of 22. And what that was is after they gave all of the first round or offered all of the first round money to various cities, some cities declined and said, no, we don't want it. And then what was left, they took that pot and then distributed it out. So we just got this little small check in April of $5,600. Since the inception of the ARPA funding, we've earned over $326,000 of interest on that money. There's no restrictions on how we can spend it. It's not part, you don't have to follow the same grant format for that. And that's a good return. So with ARPA funding, here's the trick. Those funds must be contractually obligated by December 31st of 2024. Seemed like a long time ago in August of 2021, but it's now almost March of 24, and so we're running out of time to spend this money. All of the funds have to be actually spent down and completely by December of 31st of 2026. So here's what I want to show you. So in March of 2022, we came to council and said, and asked you to kind of allocate this $5.6 million to various things. And so this so what you see there is on this side here, the description of those things. So we put $1.2 million of our ARPA funding towards employee compensation. That was, if you'll recall, we were implementing a compensation study, which is a huge jump in our payroll costs. And we spent all of that $1.2 million. Nothing is remaining there. We allocated $400,000 for utility assistance programs. This was primarily, or a big chunk of that, some of that was city money, city using its money to pay customer balances down. And some of it was we gave to organizations to distribute as far as utility assistance programs. We allocated $400,000 of that. We spent $395,312. The difference is $4,688 of that remains. We allocated $300,000 for food distribution programs, and that's been spent. We allocated $850,000 for small business grants. $730,269 of that has been spent, and that program is now over. So we have $119,731 remaining from that program. We also had two big projects that we allocated funding for. $900,000 was allocated to the standpipe park and the standpipe restoration. $736,000 of that has remained of that 900. And we allocated $500,000 to Mount Zion, and $491,800 of that remains to be spent. Our last category was $1.5 million to street maintenance, and we have spent all of that money. So you can see of the $5.6 million that we were allocated, there's $1.3 million that we're talking about tonight that we need to find something to do to. So here's the way I'm put this together. My thought process. We kind of have two types of funding, or two types of projects that we can look at. We have some of those programs that, like small business grants. We opened up that small business program. We had applicants apply for that. Most of them, all but about 15, spent all the money that was awarded. And then the rest just did not spend it or didn't spend all the money. And so essentially that money comes back to us. That's a done program, as far as I'm saying, in this example. And so I think for those programs, for that and our utility assistance, that small amount of money things, we can take that money and use it for what I'll call a new project, something new. We could use that money for more utility assistance, maybe partnering with United Way or Helping Hands. We could do another food distribution program through the senior center. We could offer more small business grants if you want. That one concerns me a little bit if you want to do that, only because we have a very short time frame here. Again, we got to get all of this money spent by the end of the year. And when you're talking, like I say, a whole new small business grant program, you'll have an application period. You'll have then the small business will have to go spend the money, et cetera, and then it requests reimbursement. So how much money do we have for that? So we had that straggler, $4,600 for utility assistance. Again, small business grants, $119,000. Remember that $5,600 of additional ARPA funding? We haven't even allocated that yet. Obligated that yet. And then we could take our interest earnings. And that money, that number continues to grow each month. So this is just kind of as a snapshot in time at December. $456,914,000 is what I would say we could use for new projects that council wants to do. Just a suggestion for that. I contrast that though with what I call here are replacement projects. So we had those projects I mentioned before, we had a program, the program's now complete, and so we're done. I mean, now it's freed up money. Standpipe project, and Mount Zion projects, however, are ongoing projects. Okay. And both of those projects have some grant funding elements in it. And because that grant process, because there's grant elements in it, it just slows the whole process down. And it does so much that I'm really worried that we would be able to finish those two projects prior to December 31 of 2024. So what I'm recommending to council is to consider.
Finish by 2026, have it
Yes.
committed by 2024.
Correct, but that starts to get tricky only because, for instance, like when you do a contract, if you do a contract by December, obligated by December 31st of 2024, say, the federal government has put out some rules that says you cannot amend that contract anytime after that. Or you couldn't do a change order or something like that later. It's not allowed. So again, that's why I'm trying to kind of expedite the spending of it to get us all done and all complete, by the end of this year.
Yeah, so the zero risk, so you're implying the zero risk is spend it all by 2024. The requirement of the standard is have it allocated by 2024 and spent by 2026, with some risk that some of that may go away if it doesn't get spent the right way.
100% correct. That's correct. Yes. Yeah. And no risk is the way I would, that's exactly what I was meaning. Correct. That's a good way of looking at that. So there's a way that we can do this. And that's find a way to spend this money quickly. And one way that we can do that is through street maintenance. So then what we would do is, because I'm not going to use the term obligated, we're committed to do these projects and we're going to stand by that commitment. I don't think we have any intention to not do Standpipe or Mount Zion. But what I can do then is, if I'm using the money from here, I'm going to go there. That's an easier way to show it. If I'm using the money that I'm allocating for street maintenance, I can do a shell game. Here's the way this looks. It's easier to show you on this graph. So we have for Standpipe $736,000 left. Mount Zion has $491,000. So essentially $1.2 million remaining for those two projects. In fiscal 24, I've budgeted $1 million for street maintenance. We also have $227,000 of former set aside street maintenance funding in our capital project fund. So I could basically do a shell game. Essentially, that's what we're talking about. I could say the ARPA money, we could use for street maintenance and spend by December 31st of 24. Then I take the money, the 1.2 million that we have set aside, if you will, for street maintenance, and I could go then do Standpipe and Mount Zion at a future date when I don't have any ARPA deadline. So we would get both projects completed. We're just relieving ourselves of the deadlines and the heartburn of the ARPA funding stuff. Because we're using essentially budgeted funds for Standpipe and Mount Zion. It literally is a shell game, but it works. It would work well in this situation. So we could expedite our spending of ARPA back to the no risk scenario.
But if you were to do that, you would probably set up like you have other funds. You would have a Mount Zion capital project fund or Standpipe capital project fund, that those would be earmarked. So we don't then forget in the future and
absolutely.
Okay. So
these both of those projects would end up in a capital project fund and allocated the funding for it to pay for it.
And that's not the full amount. That's just those two items, not the other three that you just showed. That 1.227.
Yeah, that's the remaining amount. Exactly. That's what's left that we haven't spent yet. So that gets you to what would be, let me back up. I know what you're saying. There. So this is what we
So
have
you've
allocated.
plussed
That's
up-
not necessarily the full cost of those
So
projects.
you've changed the remaining amount and you've taken the 119 and the 4,600 and the other 300,000? No, we don't have the 300,000 in here.
Right. This is what this is showing you
This
what
shows
was allocated.
1352.
Correct.
And what you just said is 1226. You said that was the amount that was remaining that hadn't been spent.
That's the 736 here that hasn't been spent for Mount Zion.
Sorry, I'm looking over there. Yeah.
That's the 736 there.
Yeah. No, I get that. But
And the
the
490.
491, it was not this. Okay.
It's
Yeah.
the difference between 1.2 and 1.3.
Yeah, we remember that the interest earnings that we've had is we put that towards new project. This is just where we would have to come up. The money that we would be taking away of ARPA money for these projects, we would have to use, you'd backfill with street maintenance.
Two components. One is the already allocated ARPA money. And then the other, the first topic that was talked about was the $456,000 that's available to allocate to projects here. So
Yeah.
there's two items. One is the shell game, basically for the use of those dollars, maintenance dollars as proposed. And then we'd like to get some input on how to reallocate this $456,000. Again, probably not doing another business grant program, but doing a program perhaps with United Way and Helping Hands and so forth. So again, two different components that we'd like to get your input on.
All right. So we've received the presentation. So now let's discuss the proposal from the council's perspective. Do you guys have any comments or questions?
What number are we spending? 1.3 or 1.2?
1.5.
We're going to spend it all.
You're
That's the
spending,
objective, right? That's the goal.
Yes, you are spending that 1.2,
Yes, and then what's left after that?
and then what's left after that is that
It's the
456.
456.
Okay, so it's 1.7.
That's what I said. Yeah, 1.7, 1.5, 1.7, whatever. Yeah, that's
Okay.
it. It's like when you go to a football game and they've got the little helmets that spin around and you figure out what's underneath it. You realize you've been watching a shell game and then you guess which helmet it's under. So there's a lot of this going on. And I understand, this is just my personal opinion. I understand to do this like for Mount Zion is to, let's get it into a fund, into a capital fund. So it's there and it doesn't turn into, pumpkin at midnight. So I get that. But I think these others, I still think that, small businesses, utility assistance, food assistance, I think those are major elements of why it was there. And to not use it for that and just to use it for something we decide magic wand, I think there's still some potential. And the thing is we could allocate, and there may be some risk, but we can say, well, we could allocate $250,000 for food, right? And if it doesn't get spent by 2024, we got till 2026 to spend it on the food. You still can spend it. So we're putting an artificial deadline of December 31st. Now, again, for the majority of it, I agree with you. I think getting that into the capital fund and using our street maintenance and other general fund projects, I think that's a good way to do it. I just think on the smaller amounts, we should probably be a little more thoughtful.
So you're saying the proposal with the 1.2 you like, but it's this amount that you're wanting to discuss.
Keeping it for what was originally intended.
But even
Generally speaking,
even
yeah.
if you contract to donate, X amount of dollars to the senior center until 2026, that seems like a little more fiscal responsible than just the shell. I'd rather see it allocated, contracted, and it has to be spent by 2026. The rush to spend it, I'd like to tap the brakes a little bit. And maybe I can't remember where parks falls into this, but maybe we could be a little more creative and do some community enhancement to a park or.
And we've got till December of this year to get that allocated.
Yeah, so yes. We chose with this money to call this revenue replacement for the city, which was one of the options. You had up to $10 million that you could say, this is lost during COVID this was lost revenue with finger quotes. And we have obligated that money. When you call it revenue replacement, the money has been, from our readings, and they may change it, but from our readings, it's been obligated once you call it revenue replacement to meet the definition of obligated by December 31st of 2020. The one part that's not is that small $5,600. And when we come back, if you say we're going to obligate 50, and if nothing else, if we obligate $5,600 to X, then we would have met that obligation as well, and we would be completely obligated at that time. Then we have through 2026 to spend every one of these dollars. And please, auditor, tell me if I'm saying something incorrect. And that's okay. I mean, and I'm fine with that.
You like zero risk.
The concern with me is I'm dealing with the federal government. With every new interim rule, we may change the definition of what I just told you.
That's correct.
And that happens a lot. It's happened many times just throughout since August of 21. Do I think we're severely at risk? Not severely, but I'm a no risk guy, just like you said. So whatever, if you want to just pause, then we were planning on bringing back a reallocation to you at the next meeting, just so because it's March and I was trying to get this done by December. But if we want to just stand back and say, no, look, we're going to use the 2026 date, then we'll work up some ideas and come back, maybe another discussion, and then we'll allocate that $5,600.
Well, and honestly, the 326,000, at least based on what you said earlier, there is no requirements for that.
That's correct.
That's interest money. That's just could go straight into the general fund with no restrictions, and no, it doesn't turn into a pumpkin at 2024.
Correct.
Right. So we could do whatever. Correct. So I think
we can also earmark that for some community improvement or revenue earned on government dollars that we help.
Yeah.
That I think would be really, really wise.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's an opportunity here to do the right thing in multiple categories, not just financial. And so I think to think about that and discuss that in 5 minutes is probably not sufficient. So I think it would be good for us to at least sleep on it and think about, because I think we're all probably in the same boat I am in. There's kind of this legal definition of what we're calling a shell game, which I noticed our lawyer's not here, probably would say don't use that phrase.
Reallocation.
Yeah, thank you, Wayne. So the reallocation, I think that there's probably some things that are good about the reallocation, but there's probably a moral sense of what was the money intended for, and please use it in the way it was intended, not just what the legal use is. And I think that these fall into buckets that we could do some really good things for the community with these, both the least of these, right? So helping hands, utility assistance, small businesses, but also community things around downtown and events and stuff like that, that there's some potential capital that I've heard that some of this money could potentially be used to enhance living in Belton.
So you're saying pull the 1.7.
I mean, right now we don't have to act on anything.
Because $1 million is budgeted, 227 amounts.
Yeah,
technically budgeted, right?
You're not
1.227.
It's you can't use $1.2 million because we got that tied up here.
Yep.
No.
So
now, unless you don't want to do that, or you want to find some other funding in the future for that.
No, I think
we don't want to pull it. Got to
No.
come under Mount Zion.
No.
Or the standby.
No.
Oh, sorry. I have my graphs backwards. You can call them graphs. That side is technically budgeted already.
This has been allocated already.
Yeah. So, but I'm not
This
saying
is
we're taking it
reallocated.
away. Okay. I confused.
Yeah.
Whatever. Move
So
on.
really what you're talking about is that amount or something similar.
What's y'all's consensus? Sleep on it? And
Yes.
Okay.
Do it in the budget process.
These aren't.
Mayor, I think your idea of sleeping on it and looking at some of the numbers and some of the original purposes is exactly what we should do. Just my opinion.
Last time we brought back a pretty thorough proposal on all of those categories, so we could do that again, look at doing that again.
We had really good success with United Way and Helping Hands and the Senior Center in careful, responsible use of those dollars, very much appreciated, directly into the community. And so we certainly can, and we've had some preliminary discussion with them about, could you spend this money in a reasonable amount of time? So yeah, all those are on the table, I think, in terms of our ability to work with those entities again, and perhaps in some other areas that the council chooses to do. So we certainly can take a little time and think about it.
And if I could just briefly, I mentioned that we called this revenue replacement. That would have allowed us to put that entire $5.6 million in our pocket in the general fund and call it a day. We could have done that. But we didn't as a city. The city of Belton, the categories that you see there, pay for government assistance, utility assistance, local food distribution, small business grants, those are itemized categories of allowable expenditures had we not called it revenue replacement. And so what we tried to do as staff and as a city, you mentioned doing good things with the money as it was intended. We tried to address in this original allocation as much of those other real categories this money was intended for. And I think we did a superior job there, probably more so than many communities, because a lot of them took the money, put it in the pocket. So yes, I'm fine with that. We'll continue down the path. I won't call this a rush matter. Let's take our time, make it right, and spend it. We'll allocate that $5,600 that we have to do before December 31st of 2024. And then we'll spend it when we spend it. After we'll create some other programs or whatever you want to do on the 456, and then we'll spend it as we can.
Well, and I think it's very possible we can find a solution. We don't need to sleep 6 months. Don't need to be Rip Van Winkle, but I think we could probably find a way to actually get it spent this year too. I think if we could do that, I think that would be.
Okay. And then,
I do appreciate the staff for going through that effort, not just calling it revenue replacement, because in reality, I think we saw an increase in revenue in 2020 and 21
most cities did.
and 22. And so it's just the moral high ground is, I think you guys stayed on that moral high ground.
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so next we have another presentation. Belton Fire Department 2023 Annual Report. Okay, all right. Does anybody? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, if y'all need to take a pause. All right, Chief.
Well, if y'all need to spend some money.
All right, slide one.
Y'all want me to wait for him?
No. Okay. Keep going.
All right. So this is our 23 end of year report for you guys. It was actually a very busy year for us. 2464. That's how many emergency calls that we had. But if you look right next to that calls per station and do the math there, you'll see that we actually had 3,111 responses. And that's the most we've had in any year. So this was kind of a record year for us. 647 of those were dual truck responses, where we're running a lot of highway accidents. Fires were 29, car fires. Those all take 2 vehicles to respond to. So it was a very, very busy year for us. Most of our calls were medical assist. And you got to remember, we only run priority 1 medical calls. So that is not, that's not the priority 2s. That's not the hangnails or anything like that. That's true emergencies. Let's see, what else do I have? Oh, I can see it right down here. Our average response time, our turnout time, that's the time that the alarm goes out to the time we get out the door, was 1 minute and 18 seconds. It's a minute and 20 is national standard. So we're beating the national standard on that. And then 7:56 is our average response time. I'm going to get to that. That's a little high. I'm going to get to why that is in just a second. The map that y'all see here, I think y'all are pretty well familiar with. The green is box 2, the red is box 1, the blue is box 3. And that's a breakdown of how many calls per box. Box 1 is obviously our busiest. That's the downtown area, the older part of Belton, 989 calls. Box 3, which is blue, that's kind of the newer construction that we're seeing. That's the south part of south of 14 inner loop type area. That was our second busiest district at 672. If you look right across from there, you'll see our busiest. Each one of those districts are each one of those boxes are cut into districts. Our busiest box is 1-1, which is directly center of town. That was our busiest box. Then right below that is 3-1, which is the inner loop south of 14 is our busiest. And what's the concerning part, why we've been talking about station moving and everything, is that particular issue right there. Our second busiest district has no fire station in it. So, and then when I put average response time, so you can see that difference. When we have a fire station in that district, you're looking at about 6 minutes. When you don't have a fire station near that district, you're looking at about almost 9 minutes for us to get there. Big year for fire prevention. We did 362 fire prevention activities, which include plan reviews, COs, in-service inspections. Now, we did 47 in-service inspections in 2023. We're averaging about 5 a day now, 5 days a week, because of that deputy fire marshal. So that's going to be a big number next year. That will, in fact, if we don't double that 362, it'll be surprising. Y'all like my artwork?
Love the characters.
I figured y'all were probably going to be tired. I saw what was coming in front of me, and I figured y'all want to see some cartoons. So I made it.
Is that Chief, what is in-service inspection?
In-service inspection is a business that's already operating. They should be, depending on what type of business it is, they should be inspected annually or maybe every 2 years. Sometimes even little mom and pops are every 3 years. That's an in-service inspection. We just go in and make sure they're still safe.
Thank you.
Training was a big year for us in training. If you look at the very bottom, on average, each one of our members had 136 hours of training in that year. UMHB is a big part of that with that house that we got. 960 hours we spent out there in the heat of the summer. It was averaged 104 to 107 degrees during that couple of weeks, but the guys did excellent. And then we have some new additions. We got a new brush truck, high water response truck. You see our new guys at the bottom. That's their mug shots. And our deputy fire marshal. I couldn't find a picture of him, so I went on Facebook and I thought that was an appropriate picture. He is doing such a great job. If y'all haven't interacted with Jeff Glover yet, make it a point next time you see him just to talk to him. He is an amazing guy. Is custom built for what he's doing. He's really good. This year we also implemented highway safety helmets. A couple of years back, we came and said, hey, we would like to get some cost recovery for all these accidents that we run. The bills just go to the insurance companies. It really doesn't cost the citizens anything. That funding allowed us to buy helmets for every one of our guys for highway safety helmets, because it's been proven that our structural firefighting helmets give us little to no protection on a crash. So they've designed these helmets that do give us protection during crashes. And we went ahead and outfitted every one of our people with those helmets. We got the parking lot done at Station 2, which was a huge help. And that was a city project. And I can't thank Public Works enough for going out there and managing that whole project for us. They did a great job. We did a lot of community engagements, 59 different community engagements, which include public education events and public relations events. One of our biggest community relations and community education is a CERT class. The police department has their Citizens Police Academy, and we have our CERT class. And that's kind of a comparable if you haven't been to our CERT class. It really goes through disaster preparedness. We already sent in 3 years, 89 students through that. It's right here at the Harris Center. It's Thursday nights from September and October. And then at the very end, there's a real fun disaster day that we have. We have 2 volunteer components in the department. That's the fire corps, and they're really designed to support the firefighters. They give us rehab. They help us with fire prevention and community outreach. The CERT program, Belton CERT team, that's really about preparing for disasters and having that resources, that call list that when a disaster happens, we can call them back. We have 17 active members who put in 3,120 hours of volunteer time over the year. So do the math on that and how much we saved on personnel costs by having these people volunteer. So they do a great job. Any questions? Pretty simple, huh?
That's great.
All right.
Yeah. Very.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Encouraging.
Chief Fontenot, how is our 1920 fire truck coming along?
I just did a interview with the press with the newspaper on that. We're going to get tires for it as the first objective is get tires, get it rollable, get it off the trailer, and then we're going to deliver it to the fire station. I have a couple of guys that are expert detailers on paint and body. They do it kind of on the side as their side job. And they've said, yeah, bring it up here. They're going to spend some hours just getting it cleaned up.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And I want to say, at least take a personal thanks. So I was the recipient of any response or whatever it is when it's type A, B, C, I don't know, whatever it was. But so for those of you guys, most of y'all know, so I had a heart attack on the 21st of January. And by the time my wife and I discussed it and we decided we better call 911, they were able to respond very quickly, get us to the hospital, realize what was going on. And so by the time we got to the cath lab, they just rolled us right in and they were ready to go. And so it wasn't just our ambulance, it was also a police officer. So the police officer came and I guess made it a little quicker to get there. And so they say time is damage on heart. And so tipitin is an enzyme that's secreted when your heart is being damaged during a heart attack. And so they measure that when you walk in the door, or for me, rolled in the door. And so you want that number to be as low as possible. And mine was at a 0. So we were able to get to cath and before any significant damage was done. So again, for these guys. So again, thank you guys. It makes personal. And I'll also say, I just got a text from a pastor in Temple who heard the news and he went into the doctor and realizes he's got blockage. And so hopefully these kind of events help others. But again, thank you guys for what you guys do. It makes a real impact in real lives. So thank you. I've had, a little bit of everything, Yeah.
Those public services, right?
I am. Thank you, guys. We keep you in business. Hopefully I don't have to watch you guys use those helmets on a car crash. So. All right. Next item is receive presentation on the Belton Police Department 2023 annual report and racial profiling report. Chief number 2.
Mayor, Council, I want to thank you all for this opportunity to present this. As you know, we've got to report this on time. Racial profiling was turned in on time. And the other thing I also want to thank you all is also the opportunity for putting your confidence in me as chief. It has been probably a month of drinking through a fire hose, been working on MOUs and signing things and getting all the different stuff going. Things are going really good with staff right now. There's a lot of excitement about where we're going and things and moving in that direction. So again, thank you. Just going through this, I also want to give credit to Daniel Ferris. He is an excellent captain, but he's also amazing at building PowerPoints and reports. So he's my graphics designer. So,
ran away.
We know. Where'd he go?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, if he built a really good PowerPoint, it would have applause while he walks back in. So.
So as you know, our pillars are fairness, impartiality, transparency, and voice, and we try to do that through our complaint process. And the interesting thing about us is we receive probably 3 to 5 kudos a day versus maybe 1 complaint a week. And usually those complaints after for thorough investigation aren't really sustained. So we always stay on top of that, and we try to recognize the officers when they get those kudos. We try to send that in the email and stuff, so we make people aware of that. As you can see, the comparison numbers between 2022 and 2023, very similar in calls for service. Traffic stops were very, very similar. Traffic warnings, I know some folks have made comments about, 82%. We try to show a lot of grace and mercy. And it's like with code compliance. I think if we can get the point across the education side of it, it's sometimes better to show some compassion and mercy, especially since COVID and stuff. We've seen a lot of, people really struggling and stuff. So there is time to take enforcement action, but a lot of it's just going to be education and just trying to get that message to slow down and be safer. Arrests slightly up, incident reports slightly up, and then traffic accidents, unfortunately, slightly has increased too. But we're not unnoticeable. I mean, population wise is going up slightly. So I think that's where we're seeing those numbers. Our response time is 4.8 minutes. And as you've heard, response is critical with us. So we always try to keep it under 5 minutes, but we're pushing goals. So we try to get that out even farther, because a lot of times we'll be first on scene. And I actually have to check up on a person not too long ago. Technology is pretty good. I can actually pull up the body cameras from my phone. I was sitting there watching CPR in progress the other day. I just need to follow up to see if the person who actually made it and put those officers in for life-saving work. But we do get there and work in conjunction with the paramedics, and we try to highlight that when the officers do a good job. As far as I know, later that evening, she was still in ICU in critical condition, but she did make it to the hospital, which is always a good sign. Busiest days, Friday, 3 p.m. is busiest hour. Obviously, July, I think because of the warm months and stuff, a lot more people out doing things is going to be busiest. And average calls for service is 93 a day. I like to report that Part 1 crimes, which if y'all are familiar with that, is murder, sexual assaults, robbery, aggravated assaults, burglary, residence, burglary, larcenies, auto theft. That auto theft, that was actually kind of surprising because there's a little challenge going on TikTok with these Kias and Hondas, and I think you've seen some of that. And so we're seeing a lot of vehicles stolen either out of Killeen or Temple. They come here and get dumped, and then vice versa. Some of ours end up. Usually, when we find a stolen car, we find where it was stolen from, like or another car in that area shortly after that. So, but the crime rate, it did go down. Part 1's went down 2.5. Vehicle burglaries are up 15%. And the way that we've tried to get in front of that was through education. I think if you've seen some of our education campaigns, and just we've also reached out. We got several orders of the locks, the clubs to go on the steering wheel. So we've been handing those out to citizens too. So just trying to do what we can do. We always encourage people, if you've got a Kia or a Honda, make sure you park a car behind it, lock it in the garage. If that's something that you can do, and just try to encourage people through education. DWIs, fatality accidents, assaults, mental health, and force against officers was also reported down. Somewhat surprising with the mental health, because we do see a lot of mental health issues. Sometimes we can go 1, 2, or 3 EODs a day, which is an emergency order for detention. So we're basically doing an evaluation through the hospital. So we are seeing a lot of mental health issues and stuff. That's why we've been doing we're really big in partnering with the, the diversion center going in the right direction, and some of the other things are helping surrounding communities, partnering with them, because people suffer those crises and they migrate from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Racial profiling report. I got a chance to teach Deputy Chief Gary how to do racial profiling this time, and he also sees it's not the easiest task to do. Basically, what you're doing is you're compiling all your traffic stops, and then you're taking them and breaking them down, and then comparing them with the population, the makeup of the community. There's nothing really popped out as something that would be concerning. It was pretty consistent as far as the stops, as far as the races and things. Interesting thing was we had a 4% of stops resulted in searches, but 59% of those searches resulted in contraband. So we are finding the things when we're looking for it, and we're trying to be proactive in finding those extra things that just people shouldn't be traveling with. If you've noticed the written stops, there were 6,991, citations 3,204, which gives you that 82%. Then warnings and arrests, that's where, you might get a warning for something for your taillight being out, but then maybe you had some type of contraband in the car or something. So that's where you see the 57 arrests and citations at 62. Code compliance, 9,011 violations. I looked at that number and that was pretty staggering for, 2 people to address. And we do, officers sometimes are responsible for going out there and addressing those too. But Josh and Talia did a really good job. And as you can see, a 98% of approximately voluntary compliance. So we don't have to usher people into court that often. We try to work with them and try to just nudge them in the right direction to keep those things in compliance. And then another 2,861 animal calls. And that was pretty interesting how he threw badge on that one. As you can see through the pictures, I think you also see a lot. We do a lot of stuff in the community, and we try to do a lot of outreach and stuff. The bottom one's the clergy partners, the promotions up there. Mary Hart Bailey does a great job of supporting. So there's just a lot of things we try to do in the community. That's one thing we're really looking forward to, is continue that. And we've got a few ideas that we've been pitching amongst the staff. And then once our community outreach person gets started, which is going to be the 11th, she's actually she's a former anchor for a news agency up in Oklahoma. So we've got some good ideas. We're working with Paul and at addressing some ways to get some messaging out there and some things, move that in the right direction. And then I really want to close with this. If you recognize those dogs, and I got to thinking about how to close this thing. And Belton really is a place, like, I love the fact that I can walk my dogs downtown. I see people, couples, elderly folks. It's a place where you see people walking, they're going from restaurant to restaurant, they're going, date nights and stuff. It's just a place where you could really, truly see the pride of the community. And that's the thing is, I just, a little quote right there is just, we focus on quality of life, we invest in the community, and we walk the streets with pride. And I think that invest in the community really goes good with, if you look at the way we try to do ARPA funds and stuff. I mean, we do try to give back to the community in many ways. So with that, entertain any questions.
Chief, I had the opportunity to attend a awards ceremony one morning not long ago, and I just remember some of the words that were spoken during that. And one of the officers who had been recognized had been in a foot chase and dealt with drugs and tackled a guy that was concerned over a weapon. I think he even scaled a fence. I mean, the words that this described what this guy went through, and all of the officers go through, just were stunning. But the thing that really rang home with me was that wrapping that up was and still established and enhanced relationships within his sector with our citizens. And that just, you're doing a great job. We're so glad you're in there. And so proud of our police force. The citation or the warnings versus tickets is just incredible. And I think we're doing a great job. And thanks for service, and look forward to additional leadership under your reign and continue the tradition of such a great force.
Thanks, sir.
Great job, Chief.
Yeah, thank you. Always get compliments about the city of Belton, and a lot of it, the look and feel of downtown and walking the streets is different than some of our neighboring communities, and people make a comment about it, and you guys are a huge part of that. You guys are a huge part of that.
Yeah.
So thank you for making us feel safe.
Thank you.
All right. Feel like an elementary teacher at the end of 6 weeks, all these reports. All right. 13, receive a presentation and consider adoption of 2024 water and wastewater master plans.
Okay, Mayor Council. I know. You beat me to it. I know it's been a very long night. As y'all are aware, you've looked over this plan. This has been a culmination of about 2 years worth of work that's been with it. From the staff side, I want to let you know that we're excited about the plan. We feel like it addresses a lot of what we need for growth and development in the future. Some of the recommendations that came out the last plan
We're a lift station along the Toll Bridge Road area that may help. Things we've done, a water tower in the northeast area of our city. These are some of the ideas that those were generated back in 2015, and we're ticking all those boxes. So all that to say, we believe in the plan. The staff does. Ginger and Sam are going to give you a brief presentation. Please do though. Stop them if you have a question. We don't mean to rush it through. It's a very serious document. And so with that, I will pass it over to Ginger Tolbert and Sam Blumenthal with KPA Engineers. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, council, sorry, this has been such a long night, and I'm going to go through the water very briefly because I think you've seen every slide that's in this presentation. So if there's no objection, I'm going to skip through most of these that you've already seen unless you have a specific question. We've talked about that water in your system. I mean, the demands, the distribution, it, is different throughout your system, and it's different seasonally. We've looked at these graphs about how your demand is continuing to grow. You've looked at these as late as 2 weeks ago. But the improvements that we've talked about that are the takeaways from the Water Master Plan are to secure additional treated water. You've done that. You've already checked one off your list. That's in progress. The Sparta pump station improvements. This slide says currently in design. Actually, it's kind of in construction. The pumps are on order. They're to be delivered later this year and installed. So there's number 2 checked off the list. You know that there are several improvements to get this additional water into the distribution system. Those are an 18-inch transmission main from Sparta to Avenue D, the parallel 24-inch transmission main along Sparta, and then an additional pump station system along Wheat Road, which is number 5, and it's kind of hard to see on the map, but it's in purple on the right-hand slide. And so, like we've talked about before, there's a lot of infrastructure costs to get it distributed throughout your system, in addition to what you've committed on the raw water and the additional treated water capacity. But these are projects that will be timed with growth and where that growth occurs. So if you have any additional questions on the water, happy to answer.
Just one quick question. You said the Sparta to D. I'm assuming that's the Loop 121, the blue line, or somewhere section.
Yes.
Is that going on
so you've
now?
got,
I mean,
no. So you've got 3 pieces. You've got number 3, 4, and 5. And so the orange piece is number 3. And then I'm not used to this screen. Number 4 is your transmission in yellow. So your 21-inch piece. And number 5 is your Wheat Road purple piece.
Okay. I just didn't know if that was part of the utility stuff that was going on Loop 121.
No, no, it's not.
That's future.
Blue is your existing.
Okay.
I tell you what, very timely. I just shared this week an article that the city of Georgetown is expected to be out of water by 2030. And so I'm glad that we're not under the constraints. We've secured this and just need a little infrastructure and population growth to meet those needs.
Correct. Well, Sam Blumenthal with our office is going to go through the wastewater slides, and he's going to go through those pretty rapidly because it's been a long night. I'm going to preface it with, he is the individual in our office that's responsible for the modeling that has transpired for both the water and the wastewater. Many of you don't realize that this is the first time that the wastewater master plan has also involved modeling of the critical components of your wastewater system. And I did bring a piece of history.
Oh, look
at this in our office.
Yeah. Look at
This
that.
is a map that was created in the very early 90s by one of our inspectors. And it is the slope and capacity of every trunk sewer at that time in Belton. And you can tell it was heavily relied on for many, many years. And so throughout my career, do you want to look at it closer, Daniel?
Is the price tag still good?
No,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I see some dollar
the
signs
price
too.
tag is out of date,
$120.
but we've come a long way. It's all digital and Sam's gonna go through that. So happy to answer questions, as is Sam.
I'm gonna do my best to move quickly through this. The first opening slides are kind of an educational focus to catch up on how the master plan process is carried out. I'll be expedited in that. I think the main takeaway here in the first slide is that in a water master planning scenario, we're watching the demand for water increase and we're trying to keep up with this demand. In a wastewater master planning scenario, we're looking at what is the ultimate need of the system and how can we accomplish that? We don't build in an iterative way where we continue to increase conveyance. We want the conveyance that is designed and constructed now to last through the entire planning horizon. Why is that? I'm going to move to this next slide pretty quickly. This is a typical layout for a wastewater system. This is one of the graphics in the report. The most important takeaway here is that flows are cumulative. So much like a watershed, customers at the top end of the sewer shed, their flows combine into a gravity system as you head this way. As you head downhill, more and more customers contribute their flow to this wastewater system. And the primary trunk line going there continues to grow and grow and grow in size as more customers are added on. So very similar to a watershed, you start with little rivulets, then you have creeks, the creeks form rivers, the rivers get larger and larger as you head downstream as more and more tributaries enter. Why is this important and why do I want to touch on this is that the wastewater master plan is being designed to an ultimate expectation. The design ideology behind this is that when you add a new customer to the top end of your system, or really anywhere in your system, the goal is not to reconstruct the system downstream of them. If you were constructing for just what you needed now, every time a new customer came to town, you'd have to rebuild the whole system. We're trying to avoid that by building to these ultimate expectations. As Ginger mentioned, this is the first time that we've had the opportunity to model with a computer model the hydraulics of the sewer system. That relies heavily on GIS data. The City of Belton GIS department, when we began this project, had horizontal data, size, and material. And I've skipped over a couple of slides, but essentially you need to know that the determination of capacity comes down to the size of the line, the roughness, and then the steepness. There are two components: steepness, length between manholes, and then the actual elevation of manholes. Before this project, City of Belton GIS had no elevation for their manholes. But together, KPA and City of Belton GIS department, we worked together to look through old drawings, old plans, and we mapped 32 miles of wastewater lines. This is an added value. This isn't something that was initially part of the scope, but is a necessary part of being able to have a hydraulic model of your system. This is a quick exhibit of what was modeled. We modeled basically the meat of your system, the trunk lines, interceptors, and primary collectors. Again, you can see the highlighted stuff. They're varying colors, which have different significances. But that's the 32 miles. That's the most important stuff within your system. And we've given documentation to the City of Belton GIS department that they can understand going forward what is important to collect. And we've guided them through that process to what other cities are collecting and what we would need from a plan perspective. So they're still continuing to do that. Granted, KP and us and GIS department, we work together for a short term, but daily after this master plan, they're going to continue to add to that system. So next time that there's a planning initiative like this, there'll be more information to work with. We can model more and more of the system.
So the gaps in those lines would be transmission, or so you've got these areas that are floating out by themselves. We're assuming there's a force main from one point to the other to connect them?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So these are areas that can be collected. Okay, gotcha.
Yes, sir.
Just trying to figure out, I was playing connect.
If you zoom in, there's real.
Okay.
And if you have the time, there's also all these exhibits that we're seeing here are in full size as part of the report, and of course, more narrative information in there to look at. The next stuff to talk about is the geographic scope of the project. Largely, we are including everything in your wastewater CCN, which is shown in purple. There's a black line around that is the planning area. Largely, the planning area includes everything that the state believes you are to serve, which is the CCN. You'll notice there are some holes in the CCN. We're not leaving those out. We're going to include them. There's some instances where the CCN didn't quite go up to I-14. Well, we moved the planning area to I-14, assuming that we're not going to leave out the 1/4 mile leading right up to the frontage road. We're going to assume that that's going to someday see wastewater service. A lot of considerations in this. You can see them listed there, but we'll keep moving. Within that, there are sewer basins. This is a subdivision of your planning area. This is basically the different watersheds, which way things flow. So each of these has a common point all wastewater arrives to. So like you mentioned on the previous slide, Mr. Mayor, South Belton shown here in that peachy color has no direct gravity flow back to Temple Belton wastewater treatment plant. As you all know, there's a lift station down there that's been recently constructed to accommodate that basin transfer. Again, there's a wonderful 300-page report that talks all about the things that we've done. I've just listed some here. So it's also condensed in this PowerPoint if you're curious about some of the work that was done there. Within those, there are subbasins. Those are essentially the calculation units, and those are hand-drawn, and they represent the amount of flow going to each wastewater line. So we know the geographic area that we want to serve. And we know that we want to serve the ultimate population because we don't want to keep reconstructing the system every time somebody adds on. We want to build these trunk lines that will last. How do we determine flow? Flow is the primary indicator of flow is land use. There are also other things to consider, like unintentional inflows to the system. We use peaking factors so that, much like when I run the hydraulic model for the water system, that's based on max day. We're trying to deliver water to every customer on the worst day of the year, no exceptions throughout the year. Likewise, extreme flow analysis is a fancy word to say we're looking at the worst possible moment with all these customers added on. Are we able to serve them? The ultimate flow does two things. It provides us an opportunity to determine the sufficiency of existing infrastructure. So if we left what we have in the ground today, will it be sustainable down the road? And then, of course, areas that are undeveloped, this gives us opportunity to set alignments and some initial pipe sizes and, you know, kind of coordinate the interactions between basins. I think the simplest way to say this without getting too much detail to keep us moving along, we use the combination of your existing land use plan for areas that were already developed. And we used the future land use plan for areas that were undeveloped. We took out things such as right-of-way. We don't hold back any expectation that someone is going to request wastewater service at the intersection of I-14 and I-35. That's been removed from the calculations. Again, more information is available in the master plan report. There's just a quick snippet of the exhibit that kind of details that work.
Quick question. So
Yes.
if we're in the middle of a update of our future land use map, is this flexible as well?
Flexible, like, could you explain more?
You can change your model based on.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
If we're in the middle of an update to our land use map.
Ginger, do you want
Yeah.
to add anything to that?
So this is the way it always happens. I've done multiple of these for multiple cities, and we get to the end of the master plan and they go, let's update the land use. So yes, I mean, once the land use is updated, if we wanted to go back and revisit that, with it being in the digital form it is, there's what I'm gonna call some GIS magic that
Okay.
Sam can overlay and kind of repopulate those calculations to show the differences, and it will change the flows potentially. And so it could change some of your pipe diameters, for example. If the usage is higher.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't want to lock in the,
In a
you know.
perfect world, your comp plan and your land use comes before your water and sewer master plan, because they're the
Yeah.
building block of them. In a perfect.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, but it also could be used to inform the land use plan to say, well, the
Yeah.
cost of this development would be an upgrade to your sewer line because it's not sufficient for that density or whatever, right? So
Correct.
it's
Use it in whichever order
Yeah.
you choose.
good tool.
Yeah, excellent point to bring up. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just quickly to touch on the hydraulic analysis, having this computer model allows us to determine the sufficiency of existing infrastructure. So is the stuff that we have now going to last into the future? And I do want to reiterate at this point that the wastewater model, based on the scope that was defined for this study, is looking at ultimate build out. Once Belton, everything that was low density residential is low density. Everything that's supposed to be a quarter acre lot is a quarter acre lot. So this is looking out into the future because again, we're planning the system to be able to have access to wastewater conveyance without reconstructing the system every time new customers come in. So we look at the sufficiency of the existing network under ultimate conditions. That's not to say we're looking at the sufficiency of the existing network today. We also take the time to look at preliminary design of the network, potential to reduce lift stations. We also look at the interactions between basins to determine what kind of basin transfers we currently have. Does rerouting one have a benefit for us down the road? All of that can be detailed and looked at in the wastewater master plan report itself. What I'd like to do is step through a couple of the key highlight findings that came out of the report and the analysis. The first one I'd like to touch on is the area south of Loop 121. This area drains naturally to the Lampasas River. It is topographically disconnected from the Temple Belton wastewater treatment plant. As you all know, recently there was the South Belton lift station was created to serve some of that area and pump flows back to the Miller Heights trunk, which then conveys flows to treatment plant. Also currently in that setup, that arrangement is going on with Three Creeks, the subdivision. They have their own lift station and they're sending flows to Miller Heights. I think we can just look at the map real quick. Just as a warning, Belton's system is very long north to south. So a lot of these maps are turned so we can see them on one page. So in this map, north is looking to the left there. I-35 is running through the middle of it. I-14 is running through it. The black line showing the Miller Heights trunk, and we're looking here at all the contributions that are headed towards the Miller Heights trunk. Currently, I'm not aware of this being a problem, but as the areas in red continue to develop, those are areas that currently send flow to Miller Heights. As they continue to develop, which they will, South Belton does not have a lot of dense development. Miller Heights still has places, open land to have new development. And then areas in yellow, which don't have currently access to send flow to Miller Heights, but inevitably will without an alternate solution. So all these areas are going to start sending flows. Either red could do it immediately, yellow could do it down the road, are going to send flows to the Miller Heights trunk. The wastewater master plan in its calculations has determined that that arrangement cannot last forever. Eventually, if all these areas contribute and send their flows that direction, the Miller Heights trunk will be exceeding capacity.
Is the dotted line that encompasses that whole thing, is that our CCN? Is that where or do we have certificated areas outside of your dotted line?
Your CCN stays wholly within the outside black line.
Okay.
So those are areas that, yes.
So
are
there's
within
nothing,
your CCN.
I just was curious if there's anything in the future that we would have to handle.
Sure.
That's all future in that area.
Yeah.
Can I ask the question? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yellow, generally speaking, is in your CCN, but it is unsewered.
Yes.
Currently,
Yes, that's correct.
obviously.
Well, the reason for asking that is at some point, I think that Salado and Belton need to do something similar to what Belton and Temple did along the Leon. We need to do along the land passes where it'd be a joint sewer treatment plant.
We're gonna give you that opportunity.
Yes.
Sam, can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
At the beginning of that slide, you said something to the effect of, I'm not aware of any issues in this particular area. Is that right?
I did.
Oh, does that consideration include planned growth that hasn't happened, like River Farms, for example?
So I guess your question is, in the near term, can River Farm still go to the South Belton lift station and go through the Miller Heights trunk?
Yes.
I would feel safe to say yes.
It was designed to do so.
Yes.
Yeah, we can say.
The Miller Heights trunk was reconstructed with the intention of serving that South Belton basin. And in the master plan efforts, we didn't want to betray the money that Belton has already spent to allow that opportunity. So essentially, if all flow currently needs to go to the Temple Belton wastewater treatment plant, and that large area that was yellow would eventually overcome the conveyance to that plant, the idea is then, the recommendation would be it's time to look at maybe another plant site along the Lampasas River. There are a couple locations here, and we can talk about that more here in a second, but essentially everything in green in the master plan's recommendation would be sent to this area.
Do you guys work with Salado at all? So
Well,
have we taken the two models together to look at a proposed site would be better for both entities, where one might be better for one?
We no longer work for the village of Salado.
Okay.
We made the decision about a year ago to no longer work for the village of Salado. I believe MRB currently works for the village of Salado. That said, there was some discussions, I'm going to say 3 to 4 years ago, about some joint efforts. I don't think they were terribly receptive at that time. But that
things change.
Yeah, I mean, that could be revisited.
With the development on the other side
Yeah.
of Salado and continued push with special use districts, this is where a CCN, regardless of special use district, this is the
No doubt. No doubt. There's an opportunity here, and what Sam is describing is an opportunity, whether it's Belton or a joint effort, to look at that possibility in lieu of continuing to upsize the trunk line at Miller Heights. I mean, it's been upsized numerous times, and it would continue to have to be if we continue to push everything through it. I'll let him continue.
Yeah, okay.
And one last note on this is that the South Belton lift station and its service area can still collect flows and send through Miller Heights, as is the current arrangement, so long as we start moving flow and development to a new wastewater treatment plant. Okay, we can skip through these things. I'm just going to point out that previous studies have indicated need for upsizing the Nolan Creek trunk. The city has already taken initiative on that and has completed phase 1 of this through Yeti Polk Park, pretty much from Main Street to right outside this building here. 2014 study identified continued areas that need to be seen improvement. The current wastewater master plan agrees with those, and they're shown and included in the master plan. Do I need to stop on that?
Let me add something real quick. Just a highlight of Nolan Creek. So for some of you have heard this before, it may be new to others. So years ago, when we did this study specific to Nolan Creek, we looked at the service area and the full basin for Nolan Creek topographically. And that, again, is what's been done here. We divided the basin into both upper and lower Nolan Creek, and that division at the time was based upon where it could be divided with, given the existing infrastructure already in place and some, what I would call realistic pipe diameters and getting flow to the plant. The decision was made at that time that we would not sewer what's shown kind of in peach. And that if that was to be sewered in the future, it would be done by a separate plant, which you see proposed wastewater plant. So the pipeline sizing through Yeti Pope Park that was phase 1 is a 24-inch and thus does not anticipate a flow contribution from the area in peach. So either it remains unsewered and large lot subdivisions with septic, or you're looking at an additional treatment facility or a parallel to what's already been built and upsized downstream.
Cost of a waste, just thumb in the air, million, 10 million, 100 million, a billion, what's a wastewater treatment?
I will tell you that Salato's, which has been what, 8+ years ago, and my memory's bad, so it's probably longer than that, was $10 million. And I think it's 300,000 gallons a day. And I would triple that at this point, knowing the inflation we've all seen.
Well, and there's a community around Waco that's trying to go through the permitting process, right?
Yeah, that doesn't even speak to being able to get a discharge permit. So
Okay, that's fair. You want mixed clouds?
Thank you, Sam. So with that, guys, we've got obviously all of the recommendations in there from water, wastewater. We've also got those great exhibits. We'll have those at City Hall that kind of outline all of this for you guys. And so a lot of effort from Ginger, from Sam. So I appreciate them. And the computerized model. Don't forget that. We're in the modern ages now. We're really cooking with what they were able to put together. So we're in a good spot.
It's great.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Great job, Sam.
So, yeah, so right now, we've received the presentation. I think we've probably had several conversations along the way that we'll probably want to have some workshops to really start probably nailing down some timing and some strategy around it. We probably don't want to do that tonight. But as far as the master plan and all that stuff, we would need to make a motion to adopt this master plan.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the master plan as presented.
A motion and a simultaneous second. Any other discussion before we vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No. John. He went no. He went no while she was. Yeah. Wayne. Thank you for being here. I'm sorry it's been so late. I know we got to exit that. Sorry it's been so late when you're on vacation.
Oh, yeah.
That ends the
Sorry,
regular
I got a
portion of our
margarita.
meeting. We are going to have, we have on our agenda items 14 and 15 executive session. We will not be taking action. So if you guys want to go home, that don't have to be here. We're not going to do item 14 at this time. We will only be doing item 15. It'll be fairly short. So we will convene here in just a minute, executive session pursuant to the provisions of the Open Meetings Law, Chapter 551, Government Code, Vernon's Texas Codes annotated in accordance with authority contained in Section 551.072, deliberation regarding real property. Again, no action will be taken. Thank you guys for being here. What a wonderful evening.
Buenas noches.
All right, Wayne, you're welcome to hang on.
I shall.
Yeah.